It is Wednesday, Hump Day. Thank you for joining us here this afternoon on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Across from me, Carlene Bragg.
Hi, everyone.
How are you doing today, Carlene?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right. It's rainy.
It's rainy.
Another rainy day.
It's a little gloomy.
I left the hoodie.
You did.
This time. Y'all got on
you got more business rather than casual.
Here's the thing. So I wore a hoodie during our hit this morning. I came in, Danielle Stein at Panthers camp, and I rushed back here because we had some breaking news. J.C. Horn was in a car accident. Yes. He's okay. He's at practice, not practicing, but he's at practice. So I rushed back here, and as soon as we got
hoodie
on air,
ready to go.
Like, oh, get that on. So I had to make the collar. I had to pop the collar up. So that's
He's
how I'm doing.
He's a professional. Everybody, don't worry.
I am. I had to get ahead of whatever.
Right.
Criticism, whatever I was going to get.
You're a journalist through and through. You came back immediately.
I gotta be professional.
No matter hoodie or not.
Professional. I think the glasses help so a little bit.
For sure.
All right, so we got a busy day, a lot going on this afternoon. Again, thank you for joining us here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. And today is Wednesday, but it's also a big day here at WCNC Charlotte.
Sure is.
Because, look, school is back in session for kids in South Carolina. We've been talking about it for weeks, but in North Carolina, kids go back to school soon. And it could be tough out here. I remember what it was like. My mom trying to get the back to school back in. I'll take you back to 05. Get the fresh gear, the jerseys, the shoe. But outside of the clothes, it was the pencils, the pens, the notebook paper, the binders, the cool book bag.
Yep.
And so it could be tough. Parents have to choose sometimes what's more important.
Yeah.
And so, look, we're working with the United Way of Greater Charlotte to make that easier on families, on parents. And we have a special guest here in studio. We have Jamise Ivy with United Way Greater Charlotte. Thank you for stopping by. You've been busy this morning.
I have. This is my second interview with you all today.
Did you get a cup of coffee before you got in here?
I did. I got my coffee. I got here in all the rain, but I've been here having a lot of fun.
I have to ask, as we build up to back to school time, what is that like for you guys as you ramp up to help families?
Yeah, so at United Way, we do not do direct service, but we fund nonprofit agencies who work in our 4-county footprint. And so those agencies are able to speak directly with families, work directly with families to understand what their needs are. And one of the biggest things that have come back to us is families really needing that support for back-to-school supplies and making sure that their students are going to school ready to learn and to have a successful academic year.
What is the need like this year? And I should mention Jamise, Chief Impact Officer, right?
Yes.
I got the title right. Okay.
You did.
What is the need this year compared to maybe last year or other years?
Yeah, I mean, we all know that prices have gone up for everything. That includes back to school supplies. So one of the things that we love that we're able to do is, again, our partners are able to really ask parents what they need. So the donations raised for the back to school drive will help parents alleviate some things in their budget. So let's take care of the school supplies and you focus on other things you need for your household and for kids to get back to school.
Do you around this time do you start reminiscing like I just did about going shopping with your mom or your dad back to school?
I do, and when you said 05, I was like I'm a little younger, so that made me laugh, but but yes, of course, like you think about all the things that you had to stuff in your book bag on the first day and things you left at school versus kept at home. So yes, so reminiscent, and I now have children and will have to start doing that soon, so not sure if I'm looking forward to that part.
What was when you think back first day back to school? What was the first day back to school like for you? Did you lay out the clothes? Did you get the binder? I wasn't a book bag guy. I was more of a binder person.
So I will say that I am a product of CMS. So it's funny. So I went to school around here. I was a nerd, so everything had to be in my bag. So I needed every folder, everything that the teacher said I needed.
Chunky book bag.
I had the chunky book bag.
To be in this position where you're able to give back, you were manning the phones along with the team at the phone bank, and to hear those conversations with families. For you personally, what is that? Your mom, what does that do for you personally?
Yeah, again, I was born and raised in Charlotte, and depended on nonprofits to do to make sure that I had what I needed to be successful in life. And so I understand kind of what families are feeling and needing at this point. So I don't know, I just find the joy in being able to help families. So being able to be here today to talk about the phone drive, it just brings me joy that we are going to be able to directly serve families after the donation drive is over.
And the work never stops. Y'all are always doing something at United Way. I'm like, when did they ever? I mean, I guess you guys can't afford to take any time off, but in a couple of weeks or a little longer than that, you have Day of Caring.
Yeah.
For those who have never been to an event or ever heard of Day of Caring, what is that all about? Can you talk to us about it?
Yeah, so again, we're in a 4-county footprint, so we serve Mecklenburg County, Anson, Cabarrus, and Union. And so on August 23rd from 8 to noon, we will be at our Union Day of Caring, so out in Union County, where we'll be serving residents in that area.
That event, I guess, what is that like out there? How can folks? I guess I should start with how can folks be a part of it? How can they help? And where can they get more information on it?
So this is going to be a really fun day for anyone, no matter what their skill level is, but we'll have 70 outdoor projects. So we'll start at Wingate University, and then folks will disperse into different areas. We focus on helping the senior citizens in Union County. So you'll be doing housing projects, you'll be sprucing up garden beds, you'll be painting. So whatever your skill set is, we need it. If you have tools, we would love for you to bring tools out to help us. But yeah, it's just a day of doing outdoor activities for our senior population in Union County.
And y'all put people to work, because I went to the Lakeview one back in June. Oh man, I was sweating.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, I did a whole workout out there.
Yeah.
Breaking down trash. I think we basically tore down a shed, moved some furniture around. I'm like, man, I'm glad my back is in good shape. I'm glad I'm in good shape. So that's kind of the work. So when you see those folks out there, I mean, volunteering their time, it's probably going to be hot out there.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. What is that like to see? Do you ever take everything in? Do you ever are you just constantly working, running around, trying to get things done?
I think I do both.
Okay.
And again, the beauty of the projects that we put on is that they are resident focused. So our residents are telling us, like, this is what I need. So we're able to bring volunteers out to really make sure that that need is met. So when I think about the big picture, it is us really serving people of what they need. But then being able to bring other people into the fold to see like what the work looks like, what we're doing. And then of course there is a lot of running around too. So I try to balance it and do both.
Jamise Ivy, Impact Officer with United Way of Greater Charlotte, doing incredible work as always. We love partnering with you guys. Don't be a stranger. Come back to the studio.
I would love to. This has been like a very fun day.
This studio is pretty. It's the first time back here in the studio, right?
It is.
It's a pretty cool studio, so we have to have you guys back. Always doing great work. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for letting us talk about the 2 events that we have going on right now.
Of course, and our phone bank. We had it during midday. Ended at 12:30, but look, we have it again right now, or I should say a little bit later at 4 p.m. to 6:30. We have our phone bank, school supply drive phone bank, WCNC Charlotte teaming up with United Way of Greater Charlotte. And we want to help families. There's so many families out there in need. So make sure you call in, make sure you donate, and talk to our lovely people in the phone bank. They're nice people, I promise. All right. So there's that. We want to shift away from that for just a second. Carlene, we want to get to a bit of breaking news. Hold on with us for just a second. We want to get to some breaking news, correct? Yes. Do we have live coverage? No. Okay, so bear with us for just a moment. So I hate to make this hard pivot, but that's what we do here in the Live Impact News. Whenever we have some breaking news, we want to get to it. We have some breaking news out of Fort Stewart in South Georgia. It's been placed on a lockdown due to an active shooter incident. This is coming from, I'm looking at both websites, WSAV out in Savannah, Georgia, and 11 Alive in Atlanta. And so Fort Stewart is located, if you're not familiar, it's located about an hour southwest of Savannah. and it's the home to the U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Division. Now, here's the information, and here's what we have so far, according to a Facebook post from the base. It says, quote, Fort Stewart is in a lockdown status due to an active shooter incident in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area. The installation was locked down at 11:04 a.m. and law enforcement is on the scene at the time. Now, the Facebook post also goes on to say casualties have been reported and the situation is ongoing. And so they are going to continue to post updates on their Facebook page. But take a look at this. It's a look at the scene. It's hard to tell what's really going on here because you see cars coming in and out. I believe this is the entrance of the base. So it's definitely hard to tell what is happening. We don't see the law enforcement present. Obviously, because we're talking about military base. And so there's layers of security to get into that military base. So this is a look at from our content partners there in Savannah, WSAV. That's the NBC station there in Savannah. And so they got a chance to speak with Lieutenant Colonel Tomko, who said the incident occurred in the 2nd Brigade area, which is not part of the main Fort Stewart area. I want to read that for you again. So Lieutenant Colonel there at the base who said the incident occurred in the 2nd Brigade area, which is not part of the main Fort Stewart area. Carlene, it looks like our content partners in Atlanta may have some coverage. I think they just popped on. Okay. And they obviously are a lot closer to Fort Stewart, but just to kind of give you, again, what we have so far, Fort Stewart in South Georgia is placed on lockdown due to an active shooter incident, and casualties are reported. All right, so we want to get to our content partners there in Atlanta, 11 Alive. This is Cheryl Preheim there at 11 Alive. Again, our content partners, they're following this. Let's take a listen in to their reporting, their coverage.
5 soldiers were injured in this active shooter incident in Savannah. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Fort Stewart. About 10,000 soldiers are stationed there, also including Army civilians working there, of course, their families as well. And what we're hearing is this was all centered around the 3rd Infantry Division headquartered at Fort Stewart there, and the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team is within that. It's also known as the Spartan Brigade, and that is where all of this happened. As of 12:10 p.m., that area is still shut down. This is the 2nd ABCT. So again, that we know that a shooter is in custody. This is one of the Army's most modernized brigades. The U.S. Army refers to the brigade as the most modern, best equipped, most lethal unit in America's arsenal, and this is the brigade that was at the center of this active shooting on the campus here in Savannah. We are following the Facebook page very closely. They are giving us some updates, and what we're seeing first and foremost is all the family members who are commenting. My son's there, my daughter's there, so still a lot of questions from the outside in on who are among the injured. We do not know that answer to that question. However, we do have the confirmation that 5 people were injured. We are looking now through our sister station, WJCL, on the ground, providing these live pictures right now. Governor Kemp has posted a statement already to Facebook. As we remain in close contact with law enforcement on the ground, Marty, the girls, and I are saddened by today's tragedy at Fort Stewart. We're keeping the victims, their families, and all those who answer the call to serve in our hearts and prayers, and we ask that Georgians everywhere do the same. We are also hearing from the FBI, also giving us some new information. FBI Atlanta has an office in Savannah, and FBI Atlanta says that office is aware of the incident at Fort Stewart, is coordinating with Army Criminal Investigations Division for any assistance that might be needed. So lockdown has been happening at all the gates events around Fort Stewart, but it has also trickled into some school districts in the area of Savannah. So for people, if you have friends or family in that area, if they have children, this is impacting some school districts in that area that are also on lockdown. That could change as confirmation has come in that the shooter is in custody, and the Army base is saying there is no active threat. Let me walk you through the timeline a little bit here. Law enforcement was first dispatched at 10:56 this morning. The shooter was apprehended at 11:35, so about a 39-minute gap between when that first call came in and when that person was in custody. The installation was locked down very quickly. That happened 8 minutes after that first call. You can imagine that was probably a chaotic time, but the response was fast. Fort Stewart lifted the lockdown of the main area at 12:10, so that was about 30 minutes or so after the apprehension of the shooter. Emergency medical personnel dispatched to treat the wounded soldiers at 11:09. So from the first call to help being on the ground for those who were injured was 14 minutes, and the incident remains under investigation, of course. And again, we can, even though we don't have specific information on the conditions of these 5 soldiers, I think it is encouraging they're all being treated on site at that medical facility, because we do know there's a level 1 trauma center about an hour away. But again, all of the 5 injured soldiers are being treated on site at that medical facility. It's the Wynn Army Medical Hospital there on the base. A lot of questions right now, as you can imagine, for everyone who works on the base, who have loved ones on the base. Again, we're talking about a massive area. The base itself is about 280,000 acres, about 10,000 soldiers roughly stationed at Fort Stewart, but then there's also Army civilian employees there. And think about all the families who either are on the base or in that surrounding area. It's located in Hinesville. It's about 41 miles southwest of the city of Savannah. It is the largest Army installation east of the Mississippi River. Again, it covers about 280,000 acres. That includes parts of 6 counties. So when a call like this comes out, there is a massive coordination that happens, as we mentioned, not just for the Army base, but for all those local jurisdictions, for those 6 counties and the schools in the closest proximity to the base, especially in that 40 minutes of time before the initial call and that shooter being in custody. That's when all of the calls out for lockdowns were happening, not just on the base, but in the surrounding area. There was a call out for people to stay inside, lock doors, and that's when the school lockdowns were happening as well. Just a moment ago, we got a new statement in from Buddy Carter that we see here on the screen. Representative Buddy Carter writing, "I am monitoring the situation at Fort Stewart. Please join me in prayers for the casualties, their families, and the brave law enforcement officers working to protect our community." Everyone coming together now, thinking of the 5 that we can confirm were injured in this active shooting at Fort Stewart. Let me just reset for those of you who are just joining us. We're covering breaking news about 40 miles outside of Savannah at Fort Stewart Army Base. An active shooter was called into law enforcement at 10:56 this morning, and the call out came to lock everything down on the base and in the surrounding area. We know the center point of this investigation is the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team, also known as the Spartan Brigade. That is the specific division in the area they say the shooting happened. Again, we know 5 soldiers are injured and as we speak are getting medical attention, being treated there Worth repeating, shooter is in custody, and we are told there is no active threat. Fort Stewart Army Air Force Base is updating on Facebook because, of course, they're being inundated from friends and family wondering what's happening. As I scroll through the comments, what you're seeing is my son's there, my brother's there, I have a friend that works there, and everybody wondering if it's someone they know, people trying to deal with that communication, but they are not releasing right now the names of the 5 injured, nor are they talking about the conditions of those people. Another statement just coming in now from the White House from Caroline Leavitt. The president has been briefed on the shooting at Fort Stewart in Georgia. The White House is monitoring the situation. So all eyes on the state of Georgia right now as this is unfolding as we speak. Outside of Savannah, of course, Georgia has a big military presence and so many military members based here in Georgia, and Fort Stewart is among the biggest. We have mentioned it's the largest Army installation east of the Mississippi River. We know the governor, the president's office now, the FBI, all working collectively to keep an eye on any new information that's coming in. Five soldiers shot in an active shooter incident. Again, this is Fort Stewart, Georgia. You're looking at this live picture on the left and an overview on the right, which shows it's about 40 miles away from Savannah. But that picture on the right, that image, that map really shows you how massive this base is. 280,000 acres, more than 10,000 soldiers, 5 of whom are now getting medical treatment. You know, there had been talk on the Facebook page about who can have a weapon on the base, which is interesting, and some of the soldiers there were saying that only the MPs carry, so one big.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Right now, we are following breaking news out of South Georgia. Here's what we have so far, and here's what we've been reporting regarding an active shooter incident at the Army base. Right now, we know there is no active threat. This is a live look from our content partners there in Savannah, Georgia. We do know 5 soldiers were hurt during this incident. All victims are at the hospital, and again, the complex is on lockdown. Now, here's we got about 15 minutes ago, we got a statement and a release from Fort Stewart on their Facebook page, and it says 5 soldiers were shot today in an active shooter incident in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area. All soldiers were treated on site and moved to Wynn Army Community Hospital for further treatment. There is no active threat to the community. So that is the latest information that we have there from the base. We want to go back now to our content partners there in Atlanta they are following the story. So let's tune back in to what's going on for the latest. This looks like they're reading a statement from Senator Raphael Warnock, senator out of Georgia. Let's take a listen in.
Unifying both sides of the aisle as we're hearing from Senator Warnock, Representative Buddy Carter, Governor Kemp, the Trump administration as well, and hearing from investigators that they're already on the ground. That's one thing you can be certain of at a base that has this profile, that investigators descended on this very quickly, and that is happening fast as we speak. Hinesville Police Department also sharing some new information. The Hinesville Police Department writing that along with other local law enforcement agencies, they responded to help out at Fort Stewart as the law enforcement on the base was responding to the active shooter. Hinesville police saying at this time the scene is secure. There is currently no evidence to suggest any ongoing or further active threat to the community. They're asking all questions be directed to Fort Stewart officials. And I mentioned it briefly as I'm keeping an eye on Facebook and X and the conversations online. There is thousands of people reaching out, asking for information about people they know and people they love. That trickle of communication is slow right now as the 2 priorities are the 5 soldiers confirmed confirmed to be injured in this active shooter and to the investigation, but they will share that communication as they can. In fact, I'm a little surprised how quickly some of that information came out as we looked at that timeline. Even the timeline of the initial call coming in at 10:56 in the morning and then the shooter in custody 39 minutes later. But now the questions will now need to be answered about how it happened, who was this person, how did they get access, what was the weapon, and then the why. That's the big question everybody has. Why did it happen and how did it happen on this base? Again, the largest Army installation east of the Mississippi River. It is like a city in itself, functioning, a medical center, so much happening there, a massive presence about 40 miles outside of Savannah. We have crews on the way. There are a lot of journalists there waiting to get answers to some of the questions that people are asking as well. We want to show you the hospital right now where these 5 individuals are being treated. Again, worth mentioning that there's been no indication of the severity of these injuries of the 5 soldiers that were confirmed to be hurt in this active shooter incident that happened at Fort Stewart just about 2 hours ago now. I do want to say that the fact that they stayed on the premises is encouraging, that they were able to go to the medical facility that was in such close proximity to where the shooting happened. Again, we have heard from Senator Warnock, we've heard from the FBI, we've heard from Representative Buddy Carter and Governor Brian Kemp, we've heard from the Trump administration, and we expect that we'll hear from many more elected officials in the minutes and hours to come, and we'll be sure to bring you all of that information as it comes in here on 11 Alive News. So just to recap, if you're just joining us, just before 11 o'clock this morning, there was an active shooter at Fort Stewart, the largest base east of the Mississippi River, about 40 miles outside of Savannah. We can confirm that 5 soldiers were injured in that shooting. We're waiting on their names and the extent of those injuries. The shooter is in custody, and we are hearing from those on the ground that they are not concerned about a second shooter. They are saying at this point there is no threat. We'll continue to ask questions, and as we get more information, be sure to join us here on 11 Alive Plus.
This has been an 11 Alive News Special Report.
All right, so you were watching live coverage from our content partner there in Atlanta. Again, a active shooter incident at Fort Stewart. Here is the latest. Let me pull up the post to make sure you have it. And let me refresh the page. This is from Fort Stewart's Facebook page. All right, so 5 soldiers shot in an active shooter incident. So 5 soldiers were shot today in an active shooter incident in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area. All soldiers were treated on site and moved to Wynn Army
From the
Community
11
Hospital
Alive Studios,
for
this
further
is the
treatment.
Georgia Vote
And right
with
now,
Faith Jesse
according to
and
officials
Zach
there at the
Merchant.
base, there is no
Well,
active
good morning
threat
and welcome
to the
into
community.
the Georgia
Now, law
Vote. The
enforcement,
race for
they
Georgia's
say, was
U.S. Senate race
dispatched
is
for a
heating up
possible
with a
shooting,
new contender launching
at a nearby complex at 10:56 a.m. The shooter was apprehended at 11:35 a.m. The installation was on lockdown at 11:04 a.m. and Fort Stewart lifted the lockdown of the main area just after 12, so about 12:10. And so, again, this is a developing story, still a lot of questions surrounding this. But again, as you see right here on our side panel, the latest information, just to recap, 5 soldiers hurt. This is a live look at the entrance of the Army base. 5 soldiers hurt. All the victims are at the hospital. It looks like there's a reporter there from our content partners in Savannah. And that complex was on lockdown, but it appears that this lockdown has been lifted because there is no active threat at the moment. Again, a developing story there in South Georgia. As we look, we still don't know what led up to this. Still, so many questions surrounding this incident. Make sure, let me refresh. Make sure we are not. And again, if you're just tuning in with us here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus, we are approaching 1 o'clock, the 1 o'clock hour here. Again, we got this information as we were coming on the stream, gathering what we know and trying to get you the latest updates on this incident. But again, just to recap, 5 soldiers shot in an active shooter incident in Fort Stewart. Fort Stewart is in South Georgia. Now, again, 5 soldiers shot, and this was an active shooter incident in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area. All soldiers were treated on site and moved to Wynn Army Community Hospital for further treatment. And according to the base, there is no active threat to the community. All right, so we have a statement now from Representative out of Georgia, Buddy Carter. This is a statement. It reads, "I am monitoring the situation at Fort Stewart. Please join me in prayers for the casualties, their families, and the brave law enforcement officers working to protect our community." So that we've been getting statements from Representative Buddy Carter, also Georgia's governor. Was also gave us a statement, and we heard from Senator Raphael Warnock, who out of Atlanta, out of Georgia, giving their statement. So we continue to get statements and information bit by bit from not only law enforcement but also elected officials as well. Again, it looks like we're looking up. Okay, so Carlene is looking up more information. Let me sort of hit the refresh button on some of this and reset a bit. All right, so here's Governor Kemp. As we were thinking just alike. I just pulled up Governor Kemp, and Carlene has the post from X right now. On your screen, you see this from Governor Brian Kemp out of Georgia. He says, "As we remain in close contact with law enforcement on the ground, Marty, the girls, and I are saddened by today's tragedy at Fort Stewart. We are keeping the victims, their families, and all those who answered the call to serve in our hearts and prayers. And we ask that Georgians everywhere do the same." That is Governor Brian Kemp with a statement. Scrolling down, see what else do we have. So nearby school districts, or nearby schools and school districts were also on lockdown during this incident. For instance, Liberty County Schools was placed on a soft lockdown, including Button Gwinnett Elementary, Joseph Martin Elementary, Snelson Golden Middle School, just to name a few. We want to go back out now to our content partner in Jacksonville, First Coast News. They are following the story. So this is in South Georgia. So it is, correct me if I'm wrong, Carlene, this is closer to Jacksonville than Atlanta. Again, this is in South Georgia, so it's not far from the Florida line, I should say. But let's take a listen into our content partner there, First Coast News in Jacksonville, Florida. Let's take a listen in.
Typically, an Army base like this will concentrate much of their facility in one area for ease of, sort of day-to-day administrative. And then their training areas would be spread out, of course, across this much larger, almost 400 square mile base. So, yeah, there is an airfield there. The ABCT combat team area is not that far from it, but it is not that far from the rest of the base.
Vice Admiral Rick Snyder, this is Jessica Clark, and we have heard that 5 soldiers have been shot, and we don't know if that means wounded, if that means have succumbed to their injuries, but we know that 5 soldiers have been shot. What does that indicate to you at all?
Well, clearly whoever perpetrated this was looking to go after soldiers. And in this case, unfortunately, was successful to some extent. The military is, going to report only what they know, which in this case is that the soldiers have been injured at a minimum. So a casualty could be someone injured or killed. And so, we'll just have to wait to see and get updates on the condition of those soldiers, and of course, wish them well and hoping that they all turn out okay.
And sir, the Fort Stewart has released a statement, and it says that there is no longer an active threat to the community. Does that indicate to you that that the person that they were able to apprehend is working alone?
That would be the way I would read that.
Yeah.
If they believe that there is no longer an active threat, then clearly they're confident that they have apprehended the person responsible for this.
Now, the person responsible could be military, could be civilian, could be family member. They would all be within the boundaries of the security gates of the military base. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and you and I talked about 2 weeks ago about some active terrorist threats against retired military people in Florida, people who had served in the Middle East. That was Florida, and you said that was a credible threat, and you wanted people to know about that and take extra precaution. This is Georgia. So I know you've worked at the Pentagon, you're in close contact with a lot of sources. Has there been any active terrorist threat for Georgia military bases?
No, certainly nothing specific, and that has been put out to the public, which, as we saw in the case in Florida, if there is a credible threat, they're going to notify folks so that they can be more vigilant and aware of the circumstances. So no, I have not seen nor heard of any specific threat to Georgia or Army bases in Georgia.
Sir, so what we're hearing too is that the call came in at 10:56 about at least one person shot at that point, and then at 11:35, the shooter had been apprehended. So from 10:56 to 11:35, that's the amount of time that we're looking at. That, if you want to call it an active shooter situation, or at least that there was a shooter and there were people being shot. What does that indicate to you? That period of time, is that a short amount of time? Is it a long amount of time?
I think that's a relatively short period of time, given the size of the base and an unknown perpetrator in an unknown area. That's a short response.
Okay.
To be able to neutralize that threat.
And you mentioned the size of the base. It is a large base. My understanding is around 10,000 people at least, and sizable. 3rd Infantry works out of there. And so yeah, if you're trying to track down a person with a gun that shouldn't have one and is doing things he shouldn't be doing with it, that is notable.
That's right, and one that doesn't want to be found, presumably.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about what sort of training goes into people on a base being prepared for an active duty or active shooter situation. You mentioned earlier that the training involves being able to act quickly and precisely.
Yeah, so two types. First, of course, are your security forces, which are separate from your, sort of the day-to-day soldiers doing their Army things. The security forces are specially trained on a day-to-day basis to be the first responders to these circumstances. And so clearly lots of specialized training for them, drills. We, on at least an annual basis, actually go through these exercises to train to them. And then you have the other folks, the soldiers, the civilians, the family members, who also receive regular training on active shooter training. And we're trained in how to respond, which is, of course, first is to leave the situation if you can. Second, hide if you can't. And then only as a last resort to address or try to go after that threat.
And Admiral, we're just seeing now that one is in custody, which would say that person is still alive. And people may be wondering, was he killed as he was shooting other people? But apparently, according to the reports we're getting right now, is that person is still alive and in custody.
Yeah, that would seem to be, if they're in custody, that would certainly make sense.
But the question, I suppose, that we're all sort of trying to avoid because we don't know the answer, and that is for everybody who knows someone at Fort Stewart or they're worried about this, is the danger over? And can we answer that at this point?
Certainly not definitively, but the fact that they are lifting the lockdown and saying that the shooter has been apprehended, to me, that would mean that the threat is over, at least at this point.
Interesting. And going back to an answer you had just given us about the active shooter training that people at forts and installations like this receive. I think to the layperson, you think of people being trained for active duty overseas. not necessarily where they're living, where they're working, where they're training.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what you would think, but there have been far too many circumstances, both across the country and the civilian society, but also in military bases where we have these active shooter incidents. And so we need to be prepared to respond, and everyone should be prepared to respond. It could be in a mall, it could be at the grocery store or anywhere else. You should always be aware and be thinking, what would you do if an emergency situation came up?
Sir, at this point, what are you wanting to know?
Yeah, of course. First of all, who this person is. Are they military? Are they civilian, family member? Who this person is. What, of course, were their motives? Were there other people involved? And then how were they able to get access with lethal force and conduct this attack?
And we don't know if the shooting was inside a building or outside in a training field. I believe you had said that in this brigade training area, there are administrative offices and outside activities. Is that correct?
Yeah, and in this area, most of them are inside. You know, the outdoor training areas are typically several miles away.
So this shooting could have happened inside an area there. And we also found out from you earlier that we know that some of these injured folks were transported. So the hospital is on base, as it is here at some of the bases we have?
That's correct, just like the Navy hospital in Jacksonville. And of course, they would take them there for a first triage and, if necessary, transport them to a higher level of care facility.
Sure, and some of the reporters in Savannah, at the stations in Savannah that really know the hospitals, were reporting that because that is not necessarily a trauma hospital, like a Trauma 1 hospital, that might be a good sign, because if this injuries were more serious, they may have been taken directly to a trauma hospital off the fort.
Yeah, that would, of course, that would make sense.
Okay.
Most of the military hospitals on the installations are not trauma centers, and so a more serious injury would likely have been taken to a higher level of care facility.
Okay.
Our viewers may be wondering what they're seeing. These are live pictures that we have at Fort Stewart. There are trucks and cars driving along a road, and since I'm not from that area, I don't know exactly where this is on the base, but it looks as if there is some sort of activity as normal now.
Yeah, it does kind of look normal, doesn't it? Going in and out.
And I'm seeing a sign there that's Fort Stewart. That might be the entryway of many gates, I'm sure, to this large military base. But again, if you're just joining us, we now have confirmation that 5 people were shot at Fort Stewart. And we know that the A shooter is in custody. We don't know about the extent of the casualties, if people have lost their lives or if they're injured, or both, or a mix. But right now we're just monitoring the situation. We know that there were at least 3 schools, 2 elementary schools and a middle school on lockdown. There are schools, as Rick Snyder says, Admiral Snyder, that there are schools on the base. So it's been a very, very nerve-wracking situation. If you look on social media now, which you may or have, I mean, just tons of, my prayers are with them. I'm worried. One woman said, my son is there. Is there any message you want to give to families and people who are just scared about this entire situation? Admiral Snyder?
Yeah, I mean, certainly looking at the same pictures you are, that's a very good sign. That is very much business as usual. It looks like one of the gates, if not the main gate, to Fort Stewart, and people are coming in and out freely. So at this point, pretty clear that the threat is no longer there. And, you know, unfortunately, 5 folks have been either injured, and hopefully that was the extent of the damage. But I think at this point we can be pretty confident that the threat is over.
We do know that that second armored combat area is still on lockdown, though, so you said we should be cautious before we just declare that everything is safe, Lieutenant.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, they're probably going to be doing, you know, the investigative process is most certainly already started, and they want to preserve that area until they can start to gather that evidence and get a better sense of what happened.
But we do want to underline, Admiral, that the main lockdown has been lifted, but it's just not totally.
Yeah, and just look at that. It does look like people are going in and out now through that particular gate that we're looking at. So, okay, very interesting. Of course, this is Fort Stewart. This is about an hour outside of Savannah. It is just north of our counties in Georgia that we broadcast to over the air. And so a lot of people in our area, especially if they have connections to the Army, are connected in some shape or fashion to Fort Stewart. Fort Stewart is a big place. And 3rd Infantry works out of there, and so they were instrumental in going into Iraq just after 2001, and so a lot of men and women working out of there. Also, the families of those men and women and servicemen and women living there as well.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. That is continuous coverage from our content partners there in Jacksonville, Florida. Just to give you some perspective, the incident at Fort Stewart, the active shooter incident, is about an hour, 45 minutes away from Jacksonville, Florida, and about 4 hours south of Atlanta. But here's the latest information that we have. Again, there was an active shooter incident at Fort Stewart there in South Georgia. As of 12:35, the shooter was apprehended. 5 soldiers have been shot, according to Fort Stewart Hunter Army Airfield. Now, soldiers were treated on site and moved to Wynn Army Community Hospital for further treatment. There's no active threat to the community. And that, again, that's according to Fort Stewart. No active threat to the community, and the shooter has been apprehended. 5 soldiers have been shot. And this is a map just to give you perspective. So
this is Hinesville down here.
Yes. And
up here is Savannah. There's the Georgia-South Carolina line.
And
Jacksonville's down here.
Yes.
So just to give people perspective, they don't know where Hinesville is.
And so Jacksonville, according to my Googling, Jacksonville is about hour 45. If you take 144, you should be able to get to Fort Stewart in about an hour 45, about 2 hours. And Atlanta is about, I say 4 hours, just to factor in traffic, but it's about 3 hours 45 minutes, about 4 hours south of Atlanta. But let's get you back to our continuous coverage there. Our content partners in Jacksonville, Florida, covering this for us, giving us some context. Let's take a listen and let's dip back into their coverage.
Unfortunately, as you mentioned, becoming all too common, whether it be at a military post or, at a shopping center or a store or a park. We are seeing these particular shootings. I just reached out to somebody who I know has military ties, asked about this. He said, I don't know of anybody there, but gosh, it's just another day, it seems like, with another shooting. And I think to some people that is indeed the case. May we never grow too accustomed to this. We are continuing to gather more information as we learn it. Again, a part of Fort Stewart is still on lockdown, where we understand the shootings took place. We know 5 people have been shot. Those are all soldiers. And we also understand that the rest of Fort Stewart, the military facility there, the majority of the facility has been reopened, if you will. It is no longer on lockdown. This all coming about around 10:56. That was when the 911 call was placed. And by 11:35, the shooter, the suspect, had been apprehended, but it was within those 40 minutes or so, those 39 minutes, that 5 people had been shot at Fort Stewart. They are there to serve and protect and to train, to go out and then serve in other parts of our world. But evidently, we're also hearing that they also do training just in case situations happen where they are training, like here at Fort Stewart.
And there you see a live look at the gate for Fort Stewart, and as Admiral Snyder has been pointing out, it looks like the activity has resumed. That's good news for most of the base. They're not under lockdown anymore, but this ABCT area that we've been talking about, the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area at the fort, that is still on lockdown as we understand that. And so that means they're investigating, or they think there is still a possibility of something to be worried about. We don't know. But we don't want to make sure, we don't want to say that everything is totally relaxed at that point, because anybody who's connected with this base, I'm sure is still a little bit on edge.
Absolutely, yeah. And I know a lot of people are wondering about either loved ones, or acquaintances, or people who they have encountered and know from Fort Stewart, because it's just simply not that far away from us, about an hour outside of downtown Savannah.
And so many of our young people join the Navy, of course, and a lot of them join the Army. And many go there to Fort Stewart, or you're a veteran, you've been there, and you've trained there for years, so you know this area well. And so that's why we hate to hear any news like this at all. We heard there was an active shooter. I think our hearts sank when that came in a little bit before 11 o'clock this morning. And since then, the news has not gotten any better. We know now there are 5 people down. There are 5 casualties. As Admiral Snyder has defined for us, in the military, a casualty could mean a death, or it could mean an injury. We know that some are transported to the hospital, so hopefully, we are hoping and many people praying that those soldiers are all going to live and make it through this. But as Admiral Snyder has pointed out, this area, this ABCT area, this brigade training area, has a lot of inside facilities, so that I don't know how large they are. And Admiral Snyder, if you're still on the phone, are we talking about warehouse-style inside areas, or would they be close enough for a shooter to do a lot of harm with a gun if he's close by his, perhaps, comrades?
Yeah, it would likely be a combination of both warehouse-type facilities for equipment storage, and then office spaces, classrooms, that kind of thing as well.
And so what does it say to you as far as what we do from now on? I mean, nobody has a solution to any of this at all. But you do a lot of work. You've worked with NORAD. You work with the defense of North America. You know that the internal threat is severe on our own land, on our own soil. What is being talked about at the highest levels now to do something different? Or is there something different to do?
Well, I think we should need to continue our efforts to make people aware of this potential threat, train and exercise to respond to it, stay vigilant, but then watch out for each other and people's mental health and how they're doing, and encourage people to get help. And if you're dealing with problems, get that help, and so that the professionals out there can make you better. But it's really about vigilance and watching out for each other.
Admiral Snyder, we appreciate your staying with us and giving us the insight as best that you can, especially from your years and years and years of service to our country in the military. We want to go through a little bit of information right now. We have confirmed that the White House is aware of the shooting. The White House press secretary posting, quote, "The president has been briefed on the shooting at Fort Stewart in Georgia. The White House is monitoring that situation."
Georgia Governor Brian Kemp released the following statement: "As we remain in close contact with law enforcement on the ground, Marty, the girls, and I are saddened by today's tragedy at Fort Stewart. We are keeping the victims, their families, and all those who answer the call to serve in our hearts and prayers. And we ask that Georgians everywhere do the same."
And just after noon, U.S. House Representative Buddy Carter posted the following message on social media. He says, quote, "I am monitoring the situation at Fort Stewart. Please join me in prayers for the casualties, their families, and the brave law enforcement officers working to protect our community." Representative Carter serves Georgia's 1st congressional district, which spans from Savannah, so that's his area, all the way to Camden County on our First Coast area.
And a brand new statement from Georgia Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock right now. It says, "I'm heartbroken to see the news of an active shooter incident at Fort Stewart today. I'm monitoring the situation closely and join all of Georgians as we pray for the safety."
Okay, let's take a live look right now of an ambulance there. We've been talking about some of the soldiers being transported. We don't know if 5 have been transported. We hope that they are still alive.
Sure.
People are, I know, praying for them and sending their thoughts to them. We know that the shooter is in custody, meaning that at this point he might be alive. We don't know if he's been injured or shot, him or her themselves. And then also right now we are all hearing that most of the base at Fort Stewart is off of lockdown, but the ABCT area, which is the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area, is still on lockdown. That's a subset of the Fort Stewart area base. And we do have Admiral Snyder still on the phone right now, and I know it's hard to look at your sources and talk to us at the same time, but have you gotten any new information in the last couple of minutes?
No, I haven't. It looks like much of what we've been talking about is being confirmed in more areas, which are, of course, at this point is good news.
Sir, do you know much about Fort Stewart and just who is there? I know 3rd Infantry, but what takes place there?
Yeah, so that's where 3rd Infantry Division is the main headquarters that's there. They have subordinate units, if you will, units that work for them, and that's what a brigade combat team is. And so that is their main base for administration and local training. And their job is to be ready for missions that are called upon. And of course, during the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, that was to deploy overseas and in many cases frequently to conduct the missions that were required over there. So typically those units will spend some time in the base in sort of a reset after a deployment, spending time with their families, catching up on the other things, the administrative kind of things, and then they'll begin to train for that next deployment. Of course, in those cases, it was typically Iraq and then Afghanistan. But we still are sending Army forces around the world, particularly Europe, these days. And so those forces would start their training. Much of that would be local initially. And then they typically deploy to a larger training base, perhaps out in California, for the training of the broader group. And so it's really this cycle of reset, recover, train, deploy. And so Fort Stewart serves as that headquarters for all of those things that are happening, and in this case, of course, where many of their families live and their children go to school.
My understanding is that Fort Stewart, outside of the military post, is certainly a military town because it's not that big. Savannah is just an hour away, and so a lot of the commerce that takes place there in that small region is because of Fort Stewart, the military base. So a lot of people in that area are going to certainly be curious about what took place here today.
And so, Admiral Snyder, let me ask you, I know you have spent much of your military career working on security for our country at NORAD, at the Pentagon, and so forth. I'm seeing a lot right now on social media, people saying, oh, my son is at Fort Stewart, or I'm worried about somebody. But then, Admiral Snyder, there are warnings. Don't put anything on social media. You never know who is reading these pages and reading these comments. Is that a legitimate concern? Should people right now not make any family connection to anybody on Fort Stewart or not?
That's a good idea. Clearly there are bad actors out there that troll social media constantly, looking for things they could exploit, and of course finding out that you have a family member in the military could do that. So it's always a good idea to be cognizant of personal information that you put out on social media. And for those families waiting, I'm confident that the officials at Fort Stewart are working as hard and as quickly as they can to notify the family of the casualties in this case, which at some point they'll be able to announce, who those casualties were and that their families have been notified, and that's when everyone really can take a deep sigh of relief. Of course, except for those folks with family members that were one of the casualties.
And Admiral Snyder, I know you work with a lot of social media posts and sources. What are the reliable ones that you look at that people can trust right now if they're trying to look up information, and which ones should we possibly avoid?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, sort of the tried and true resources, our network news, and the big thing for me is to frequently check what you're reading. And when you can, find confirmation from another news source or from in this case, the Department of Defense themselves. We see these official posts coming out from Department of Defense officials, which is really the most reliable source. But we get a little frustrated sometimes because it takes time. So the important thing is go with known news sources and then check what you're reading to make sure that you can confirm that through other means.
And what I'm seeing here on social media, obviously this story has resonated all over the country. I see a post from a Nebraska Army National Guard mom. She has 2 who served. She's sending prayers to everybody. But the question people keep asking is, was the shooter a soldier or a civilian? And Admiral Snyder, we don't know that right now.
No, we don't. And we'll just have to wait for this investigation to play out. My sense is that, relatively soon, I think we'll hear more from the Department of Defense officials as they learn more and are comfortable putting that information out.
So will the investigation be handled strictly by the military? We've seen the FBI already giving a statement that they're aware of what's going on, but how does the investigation work on something like this?
Yeah, well, typically that will fall to the local officials initially, and the Army does have an investigative service. They do have, as we've mentioned, military police adjutant generals that are charged of security on these bases. But in many cases, given an event like this, they will go out and ask for additional resources to help. And whether it's the FBI, local police, typically all of these law enforcement agencies work together very well and support each other as necessary.
Admiral Snyder, we're looking at a map now of Fort Stewart. They are just outside of Hinesville, Georgia. And according to our producers, they've been able to locate the area of the shooting at the 2nd BCT, and just an area that doesn't look like it is too close into the center of Fort Stewart. And so I'm going to try and see if we can pull up this map so we can have a better look at it here. And so here is the map of Fort Stewart, if you will. And so down here it says
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. We wanted to check in. You are now listening to coverage from our content partner in Jacksonville, Florida. Jacksonville is about an hour and a half, hour 45, 2 hours away from Fort Stewart, where this active shooter incident happened late this morning. So here's what we have so far. 5 soldiers were wounded in a shooting at Fort Stewart in southeast Georgia today. Now, that's according to the base, and the shooter was apprehended. The base did confirm that about an hour ago. The soldiers were moved to Wynn Army Community Hospital, according to the base, and their conditions have not been released at this time, and no information about the shooter has been released. Now, the call for an active shooter came in just before 11 o'clock, and the shooter was apprehended at 11:35 a.m. Video from the scene around 12:30 p.m. showed base gates were no longer blocked off following a lockdown. Again, that lockdown has been lifted. There's no active threat. 5 soldiers were hurt, all of them in the hospital, and a shooter is in custody. Again, a lot of questions surrounding what exactly led up to this. Let's take it back now to our content partners. Let's get back into their coverage. Again, they're close to Fort Stewart in southeast Georgia. This is our content partner in Jacksonville, First Coast News. Let's take a listen into their coverage.
Idea of what we're talking about when we're looking at Fort Stewart, and even here it says town center insert. So most of the activity that takes place, not necessarily for training purposes, but for I guess the general activity of the post right in here. That's shown in clarity over on that side, but again, the shooting happening right up in here. 5 soldiers have been shot. We don't know how they're doing. We don't know if they have passed away. We also don't know if it's just injuries that we're talking about. I shouldn't say just injuries. They could be bad injuries. But we know that they were taken to a hospital here at Fort Stewart. Will they be going somewhere else to a larger facility, maybe a trauma center outside of the post? We're not really sure. You would think that if it was really bad injuries, they would have gone directly to a trauma center. But again, hate to speculate here, but we're just trying to put the pieces together based on what we know about the medical facilities here and also in Savannah.
And Jess, if you can hear me right now, I was trying to look at the map from across the studio here. Do you see where the schools are marked? Because we know some of those schools were put on lockdown too. I see an icon up there that's purple. And then Admiral Snyder said that the schools would have been on base. And so perhaps at the heart down to the lower left of where the shooting was, but not near. It doesn't look there's any school, I don't believe, near that shooting.
I don't see that. DFAC and Spartan is what this particular location is, here next to the gym and then also next to the dental clinic. And I just don't know the military lingo to know exactly what that is. I would have to look at the map a little bit more closely and take a little bit more time to look at it to locate those schools.
All right, we want to let you know that upcoming, we don't have him on the phone just yet, but we understand that we're going to be able to talk with somebody from the Liberty County Emergency Management. He should have some information for us there because that is where Fort Stewart is, in Liberty County. So we're hoping to go to him in just a moment as soon as that technically gets connected right there. Oh, he's on the phone right now. Robert Bob Dodd. Mr. Bob, Mr. Dodd, can I call you Robert? Is that all right? All right.
Yes, ma'am, that's fine.
I'm so sorry. This is Jacksonville right now. I am so sorry for what you all are dealing with up there. Can you fill us in with what information you have that we might not know at this point?
So we received a call from Fort Stewart's EMA emergency manager that they had an active shooter going on. We had the police, fire, and EMS respond out there to assist in it. As of right now, all of them have been cleared back in quarters. And as they continue on the investigation, that's all the information that we have right now.
And Robert, is there any way you can tell us if the casualties involve people who are injured, or do we know of any deaths? I hope not.
At this time, I do not.
And then where were your personnel as far as going? Were they allowed on, these are civilians, or were you working with military police only?
Right, we were working with the military, so our people responded out on the base.
So can you give us a size estimate of how many civilians, police, fire, EMS went to the base to try to help on the outside there?
From us, we had 2 ambulance, 2 fire personnel, 1 fire apparatuses, and then numerous police.
And so from what you've been able to tell, is the base in the clear now? Is the lockdown over? We understood that part of the base where this brigade training is, the ABCT area, was still on lockdown. Is that your understanding, or has that been lifted now?
Yeah, that's the way we're understanding. 2nd Brigade is still locked down, but the Potomac area out on the main base is open.
Okay, and have you been told why the 2nd Brigade area is still on lockdown?
No, I haven't.
Okay, and then as far as the active shooter training that you all have, how would you be assisting the military? I know the military is well staffed. Is there a reason that they needed you all in addition to what they already have at that large base?
Right, you know, I guess the more people you have, the better off you are. And then we work really close with Fort Stewart, along with our police, fire, and EMS. We do exercises together, so this is just part of that mutual aid agreement that we have.
And do you have any connections yourself, Mr. Dodd, with military personnel, any family or friends there on the base?
No, I do not.
Okay, well, our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody in that community. Describe to us for just a moment how important the Fort Stewart area is to the community there. We live in a military community. We know how much our community honors people who serve our country. We have multiple military bases here and, of course, up in Georgia as well. So tell us about the feeling that's going on right now in your community.
Well, Liberty County is dependent. You know, Fort Stewart plays a big part of our community. I think they said 73% of the military population live within the community outside of the base. So we depend on Fort Stewart a lot.
And so there, I'm sure there's a feeling of shock and sadness. And are you seeing anybody gather outside the base for prayers or thoughts, or what's going on there in the community, or are people staying at home and still nervous?
We haven't seen anything as of yet. I haven't heard of anything that's going to take place, but you know, this is a revolving thing as things can change.
And how long have you worked in your post there? Has there ever been an active shooter before at Fort Stewart in years past?
No, I've been here for about 7 years. I don't recall a active shooter on Fort Stewart.
Has anybody told you whether the shooter who is in custody now is a civilian or a military member?
I have not heard that information.
Okay, so just to clarify what you said before, 73% of military population involved with Fort Stewart actually lives outside the base in the community. Is that correct? Did I understand that right?
Right. Liberty County, Bryan County, Chatham County, Tatnall County. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Is there anything else you wanted to pass along to the military members in our community and the people who are just generally worried about this situation, Mr. Dodd?
No, just keep Fort Stewart in your prayers, and we'll get through this, and we'll be a better Fort Stewart.
Well, we appreciate your positive outlook there, and we're so sorry for what you're going through. You start out the day just a normal Wednesday, and then something like this happens, and everybody's heart sinks. So, Mr. Dodd, we appreciate your being on the phone with us. He's from the Liberty County Emergency Management System. He's the manager there, and so we appreciate all the information he's been able to give us the best that he can. Let's now go back to Jess over there. Thank you again, Mr. Dodd. She is with our safety and crime expert, Ken Jefferson, right now.
Yes, and so Ken, thank you for coming in very quickly. And so I'm curious because we have seen the military police out there, and we know the military police responded. Jeannie was just talking with Liberty County and talking about, I guess it was like 2 fire trucks and 2 ambulances, and various police went out there to respond. They have now all been cleared. Tell me a little bit about the joint effort to respond together when you have civilian law enforcement working also with military law enforcement. How does that all work when you've got a situation like this?
So you got an isolated situation on a military base, so it's pretty much isolated away from the public, away from the community, the outside community. So you want to, and when you realize that you have an active shooter and you've got 5 people that's already been shot, you want to deploy as many resources as you can. Of course, you're going to use the military police because they're right there.
Sure.
But you want to deploy the outside police as well, which is exactly what they did. You deploy every available resource because, number one, you got a lot of things that you got to do. You've got to find the shooter, get an identity of the shooter so that you make sure you get the right person, number one. Number two, you got to make sure that there are no accomplices, that he may be in collusion with someone else that's shooting. And then you got to care for the injured. You got to get them all out. So you got a lot of things that's going on. So as many resources that you can utilize is what you want to do.
In that kind of situation, we have seen in other situations where the radios weren't all on the same signal or something like that, and the communication has not been as effective because not everybody is on the same line, if you will. Do you know anything about this particular situation or how challenging that can be?
That can easily happen, and it can be challenging at times. However, they train and practice for things like this. So the outside police have their dispatcher talking to the dispatcher that's inside there as well, and they're relaying that information. So they may not be able to talk to one another directly unless they have a designated channel that can go, the military can go to the civilian channel or vice versa. But the dispatchers are talking to each other, and they're getting all the information at the same time.
Okay, so with this particular situation, we know the 911 call came in at 10:56. The suspect was apprehended at 11:35. So that's a matter of what, 39 minutes between 911 call and apprehending the suspect. Your thoughts on that?
That's a good time to stop that threat, simply because you got a large military base, and then you've got to rely on witnesses to give a description, you know, height, weight, hair color, race, direction of travel. All those things are very important to law enforcement once they get there. And again, it goes back to deploying as many resources as you can to do a manhunt, so that you can apprehend him at a good time, or a quick time. In this case, that's exactly what they did. 39 minutes is really good for a large space like that. But the good thing is it's isolated. You don't have various areas that he can go into if he were outside of the base. All
right. At this point, we don't know if he was able to access the shooter, if he was able to access entry somehow, or if he was already on the post. Or just what? We don't know anything about him, really.
That's part of the investigation.
They're
going to have to trace it back. First of all, they have to identify him. Is he a soldier? Is he a former soldier? Is he a civilian? You know, those three questions have, once they answer that question, then they'll know how to backtrack. How did he get in? If he's not a soldier, if he's a civilian, how did he get in on our base? Was he allowed special privileges? Did he have credentials to be able to get in?
Okay.
All that's a part of the investigation that'll lead directly up to the incident.
And while you're speaking, we just saw another ambulance pull into the hospital and a police or law enforcement officer pull in as well. And so we don't know if that had anything to do with the shooting at Fort Stewart that we're talking about now, but we just kind of wanted to explain what we're seeing on our live shot here as we look at what one of the stations in Savannah is sending us now. So 5 soldiers shot. That's what we were told. 5 soldiers shot. Does that indicate to you anything that they were targeted or looking for a military to be?
It is a base and it's got soldiers on it, so maybe he shot the first available.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe he had a target.
Okay.
We don't know.
Yeah, sure.
The investigation will probably let us know more information as a result of that. But yeah, 5 soldiers are shot. It appears that he was trying to wreak as much havoc as he possibly can. Usually when there's an active shooter, they want to make a name for themselves, if you will. That sounds creepy, but that's exactly what it is. They want to make a name for themselves, and they want to shoot and kill as many people as they possibly can.
And how sad that is. And then when we received a statement also from Fort Stewart, gosh, I guess about 12:30ish or so, it said, suspect apprehended, no further danger to the public. To you, that indicates, I mean, to me, it indicates that he's the one.
Well, they've concluded that he.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Right now, it's 1:45. You're watching continuous coverage from our content partner there in Jacksonville, Florida, which is about a little less than 2 hours away from Fort Stewart, the Army base there. As there was an active shooter incident on that base late this morning. 5 soldiers are hurt. All victims were taken to the hospital. They're at the hospital now. A suspect is in custody, and right now there is no active threat to the base as far as we know, and what has been reported from Fort Stewart. This situation came in just before we hopped on the stream, and we have been carrying the latest developments, the latest news here on Live Impact News since this situation and this news first broke. So we did get an update. Oh, so before I get to the update from the White House, this is sort of an idea of where Fort Stewart is. This is in southeast Georgia. So you see Fort Stewart there in the red, and you see Savannah, which is further east, like northeast of Fort Stewart. I actually meant to do this. Bear with me for a second. Just to give
and then you got Jacksonville down to the south.
So yeah, Savannah is about an hour away from Fort Stewart. Jacksonville is about an hour 45.
Yep.
From
like
Fort Stewart.
Clear down 95.
Yep. So it's it's right there, and then Atlanta is about 4 hours, a little less than 4 hours from Fort Stewart, north of Fort Stewart. So just to give you an idea where Fort Stewart is on the map, you can see Atlanta up there in the middle. Again, Atlanta is about less than 4 hours away from Fort Stewart. Again, right there on that panel is the latest information that we have. I do want to get to a tweet from Caroline Leavitt from the White House. I should say a post on X, and so formerly known as Twitter. She posted, and Carlene is working to get that up for us, but I'll read it off. So Caroline Leavitt, press secretary for the White House, said the president has been briefed on the shooting at Fort Stewart in Georgia. Again, this is Caroline Leavitt, press secretary for the White House, posting on X. Here's what she posted about an hour ago. The president has been briefed on the shooting at Fort Stewart in Georgia. The White House is monitoring the situation. And right now, as far as we can report and what I can tell you, again, as news develops, we'll continue to bring it here on Live Impact News. But 5 soldiers were wounded in a shooting at Fort Stewart, in southeast Georgia today. And that's according to the base. The shooter has been apprehended. The soldiers were moved to Wynn Army Community Hospital, according to the base, and their conditions have not been released, and no information about the shooter has been released at this time. Let's go back to our content partner there in Jacksonville. Let's take a listen in to their coverage, sit back into their coverage.
And the information trickle is somewhat slow, right?
Yeah, that's usual and customary when
Sure.
something like this happens. Information start going left, right, north, and south, and then when it doesn't come in fast enough, people start to speculate and predict or sometimes just lie about certain things, you know. So
Sure.
you have to wait for the official word. We got an official statement from the base. That's all we go on. We don't go on anything else.
Okay. Ken, thank you so much for coming in.
Very welcome.
If you don't mind, just hold on with us for a few more minutes. Ginny, we're going to send things back over to you.
That's right. Thank you very much for all that insight. We do appreciate that. We have on the phone right now a state senator from Georgia. He's a Republican from District 1. His name is Senator Ben Watson, and he is also a medical doctor. So that's going to be very helpful in this situation. And Senator Watson, thank you so much for joining us. Can you hear me right now? Okay. Senator Watson?
But yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for joining us. This story is so difficult to hear. We're seeing all sorts of messages from people, and they're simple, but they are powerful. One grandmother says, "My granddaughter is there. Please pray for her." So many families worried. We know that part of the base still is on lockdown, that 2nd Armored Brigade combat area, which is kind of off to the side. And we know that you are not treating the patients from the base. But as a medical doctor, what sort of wounds or injuries would concern you the most from an active shooter situation like this?
Well, presumably it's gunshot wounds, and we've got to consider that. If there were 5 wounded, then if we had 2 that have been transported to the level, so you worry and pray if their injuries were that.
So, and
I'm getting
yes, State Senator, yes, we can hear you. It's cutting in and out just a little bit. So let me ask the producers, are we being able to hear this on the air, or is his audio? It is. Okay. Senator, we can hear you. So if you'll just keep speaking, it is just fine on our air.
Okay.
And so we were talking about the kinds of injuries from an active shooter situation, most likely gunshots?
Well, presumably that's the case. Is that they said there were 5 injuries, and that and it was related to gunshot stand. And I do understand from the report that there are 2 soldiers that have been transported to our level 1 trauma center here in Savannah. And as your previous speaker was discussing about the interagency agreement related to that, but it does affect the whole community. The schools were in lockdown. I understand that the schools are not in lockdown. And it is reassuring that it is in custody, and certainly the sadness and the other issue is that it does create a lot of anxiety. So it's good to know that the shooter is in custody and that most of the lockdown is been removed. And it's also very reassuring that they did take them to triage them to community hospital there on base called Wynn Army Community Hospital. Have done the appropriate thing by transferring the ones at the level 1 trauma center.
So as you understand, and I can't quite hear everything that you're saying, Senator, but are you saying that they've gone to 2 different hospitals, one on a base and one is out in the community, or is that not right?
What I understand, this is accurate. Again, everything is very preliminary in that they did initially go to Wynn Army Community Hospital. And from there, 2 are known to have been transferred. The hospital here in Memorial, which is a level 1 trauma center.
So the 2 who were transported from Wynn Army Hospital would have gone to a higher level trauma center, so injuries more severe?
Well, that would be the presumption. Or were they overwhelmed there at our community hospital to handle 5 victims there? And it could be a matter of helping out, or it could be a matter that they need the high level of service.
How far apart are those hospitals?
About 45 minutes, probably about a 30-minute ambulance ride. I understand that they chose not to go by helicopter because of the weather.
Okay, so the Wynn Army Community Hospital is on base, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, we've been watching live pictures outside of the hospital, and we see ambulances just in the last, I'd say, 5 to 7 minutes with police escorts. We do not know if those were part of the injured personnel from the base or not, but that's quite a bit of time since the shooting happened. What would that tell you?
Well, I mean, first of all, they received care, at the site, and then they were taken to the local community hospital care on base. So you would want to stabilize them, communicate, assess them, and do whatever was needed from a trauma care that they would need at the time. And then if they needed a higher level of care, you would transport them then. I mean, it sounds like they're doing everything very appropriate. You don't want to rush things. You want to put in a
Senator, I'm not sure if you, I don't want to interrupt you, sir, but we've just gotten some encouraging news here that, and I apologize if I'm interrupting you, but we've just been told that there are no wounded soldiers who've died. So there are no fatalities. And so all 5 of these wounded soldiers apparently are being treated. None has died, as we understand it. That's confirmed information according to a U.S. official. Also, the shooter involved in this was a male soldier there on base. So the question has been, was it a civilian or a soldier? And we now know from confirmed sources that it was a male soldier. And there is all clear for Fort Stewart, Wright Army Airfield, and Evans Army Airfield. They are all clear right now. So that would tell you some good news, wouldn't it, Senator?
Absolutely. It would be great news. No one died. I think that's a relief for everyone. It is also reassuring that the soldiers at the Level 1 Trauma Center are in a place where they need to be and can be taken care of. Georgia has a great reputation when it comes to trauma. As a matter of fact, we lead the nation when it comes to reduced mortality and morbidity relating to trauma care. We have done a great job. The trauma surgeons, done a great job in leading that through research and residency program and training throughout the state.
And you're talking about throughout the state, not just at the Level 2 Memorial Hospital, the trauma area there.
So Memorial is a Level 1 trauma care. It's the highest level we have in the state. It is what we have here in southeast Georgia, and that is for the whole state of Georgia, better than Florida, better than South Carolina, better than any of our neighbors, better than the northeastern United States. Georgia is at the top when it comes to trauma care.
At this point, that's really good news. And I don't want to throw any sort of negative thought onto this, but just because someone's alive now, they could still be in critical condition, and we don't know that yet. They could still be in danger of losing a life. Right now, they're alive?
Absolutely. I mean, if they are at the Level 1 Trauma Center because that's needed, that would certainly show that they have increased risk relating to that. And you're absolutely right about predicting anything that may happen in the future.
So you represent this whole area in Georgia, in District 1. I'm not sure what that encompasses. Does it encompass the Savannah area, or are you just near there?
So I have about half of the city of Savannah, and I have all of Bryan County, all of Liberty County, which is what Fort Stewart is in both those counties, and I have about half of Chatham County, which is where Savannah is.
Okay, I don't know if this is a fair question, but it's on my mind, so let me ask you. Since you are a legislator from that general area there, that 2nd Armored Brigade combat area where the active shooter apparently was kind of off on the side of the base. If you look at a map, it's kind of up on the northeast area. Has there been any public concern about that area not being as protected as the rest of Fort Stewart, or is that not a fair question? Senator Watson, can you hear me?
Again, that's a federal facility versus state. I can't comment.
Okay, I understand. Very well. Good. I appreciate that. So let me leave you with one more opportunity to talk to any families or people in your community who are very supportive of the military and just heartbroken to see this even happening today. As a state senator, what is the message you'd like to give out?
Well, I mean, we're all sad and heartbroken. And we're thinking of you, we're praying for you, and we're very sad that this happened, but we're certainly very happy that it sounded like they responded appropriately and expeditiously. And It affects the whole community, not just those who are in the military, but everyone in our community has interactions with the community. So it certainly does create a lot of anxiety, but it is reassuring that this is very fast and they're handling the situation well.
And Senator Watson, as you well know, Jacksonville is a very, very strong military community. We have our military bases here and thousands of people who have served in the military who are either on active duty or they're veterans of past conflicts, and their hearts go out and their prayers go out in a situation like this. Lots of camaraderie, lots of prayers and thoughts. Senator, we appreciate that. Senator Ben Watson, a Georgia State Senator and also a medical doctor. Thanks for joining us on the phone right now. We want to give you an important update on the schools that were put on a soft lockdown during this active shooter situation. Liberty County schools now saying the lockdown has been lifted. 3 schools were impacted. The school district saying right now there is no threat, that the schools on base now are free from the lockdown, so that's some good news there. And so let's go back over now to Ken Jefferson, our crime and safety analyst, and Jess. So Jess, go ahead.
Right, and in the last few minutes now, we have learned that 2 of the 5 soldiers that were shot have been taken via ambulance, not helicopter, to Trauma 1 Center, medical center elsewhere off base. Your thoughts on that?
Of the 5, 2 has been taken to the trauma unit, which means that they need immediate urgent care in the trauma unit. That means that they're probably in critical condition. They're a little worse off.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Right there, you're watching live coverage from our content partner in Jacksonville, Florida, on the incident that happened at Fort Stewart this morning, an active shooter incident that left 5 soldiers hurt. That lockdown has been lifted. 1 person is in custody, and right now there is no active threat to the Army base. Just to recap, 5 soldiers were wounded in a shooting at Fort Stewart in southeast Georgia today, and that's according to the base. They also confirmed that the shooter was apprehended. The soldiers have been moved to Wynn Army Community Hospital. That's according to the base. Now, their conditions, as far as we know right now, have not been released. No information about the shooter has been released as well. We do know that the White House and President Trump have been briefed on the incident, and we do know that they are monitoring the situation there at Fort Stewart. Let's get back into our continuous coverage there at Fort Stewart. And see if we can learn some more information about what exactly happened. Let's take a listen in.
They have the bomb unit with them so that they won't walk in on any kind of booby traps or anything to take out officials as they're investigating him. So all these things are in the play right now. It's a lot of moving parts that's going on right now.
And if I may add just some emotion, I think for anyone hearing that, it's just got to be sad that a soldier would end up turning a gun on fellow soldiers.
Yeah, it's a sad commentary, Jessica, to even imagine something like that, because the military is built on camaraderie, teamwork, team building, all of these things for the protection of our country. And to think that someone inside would turn on his fellow brothers and sisters who wear the uniform, who defend our country, to do something like that. I don't want to say it like this, but I can only think of saying it like this. You can kind of, I don't understand any of it, but you can kind of understand if an outside person came in and did something like that, but it's very difficult to digest that a soldier will do that to other soldiers.
It is very difficult to digest. Yeah, you're right. So thank you for being with us. We're going to continue our coverage, and we're going to, at this point, send things back over to Jeannie. Jeannie?
All right, we want to make sure we give you that recap, because right now it's hopeful. We know that no one was killed. 5 Army soldiers being treated right now. 2, as you all have been talking about, and we've been talking with the doctor from Georgia, were in critical or are in critical condition. They're at a level 1 hospital, level 1 trauma center. We know that a male soldier is in custody, and we also know that Fort Stewart, Wright Army Airfield, also Evans Airfield, all clear now. The lockdown lifted for that. Lockdown lifted for the schools on base as well. So let's get back on the phone now with our military expert, Vice Admiral Rick Snyder. And Rick, that's some good news, at least now. We hope those soldiers, especially the ones in critical condition, are going to pull through. But what does it say to you now that we know the shooter is in custody and it's a male soldier?
Yeah, I would echo the same comments made earlier. It's certainly unfortunate that someone as part of your unit would do this kind of thing to your fellow soldiers in this case, and certainly a tragedy. It's something we also train to in the military, and it's this idea of insider threat. It's happened before. We've had, of course, the soldier at Fort Hood many years ago. One of the foreign exchange students in Pensacola several years ago. We had it at the shipyard in Hawaii. We've also had it at the Navy Yard in D.C., so it's not uncommon. And as a result of those past events, we also trained to this insider threat, how to recognize it and how to respond.
And so let me ask you that. I was wondering the same thing as you were talking about. What is the current training? What are the current red flags that people are supposed to watch out for in addition to just generalized malaise among people? Somebody who might have PTSD or whatever it is, what is the current training?
Yeah, I mean, certainly their apparent or their psychological appearance. Do they seem depressed? Do they seem anxious? Are they doing things that are unusual? Is something you watch for. And you also look for other signs. Are they doing other things that are inappropriate and something that need to come to your attention? And then threats. You have to take threats seriously. But most importantly, you have to be able to be willing to come forward with these signs if you see them or notice them, and bring it to the attention of the right folks so that action be taken before it goes too far, like it appears to have done in this case.
And for all of us laymen, help us understand. We just said that Fort Stewart now all clear, Wright Army Airfield clear, and then Evans Airfield clear too. Help us understand how those all fit together. What are those pieces?
Yeah, typically, because there are aviation units at Fort Stewart, they use their own local fields to do a lot of their training rather than congest a civilian field like, say, Savannah. And so they typically have these smaller fields nearby that are generally for just military use. In some cases, they're dual use with civilians, but it gives them a chance to have more freedom at those bases to do the type of training they need to do.
And I just a minute ago asked the state senator from that area, Ben Watson, about this place where the active shooter shot the soldiers. And we've been talking about how it's been called for short ACBT, which is like a brigade training area, on the far corner of the map when you look at all of Fort Stewart. And I asked him if there's ever been any concern in that community about the safety of that part of the base. And he said, well, that's a federal issue. I can't talk about that. Would that seem to you to be any concern that it's kind of off on the edge of the base? Is the security just the same there? You see it's in the upper right-hand corner of your map right there on the TV screen.
Yeah, and just to clarify a little bit, I mean, the maps we've been showing are very accurate with sort of the main area of Fort Stewart, which is really just a very small piece of the larger base. They're essentially contiguous with the other areas we talked about, the hospital and the main gate and that kind of thing. And so this is off to the side, which wouldn't be uncommon. But I wouldn't be surprised if, in fact, there was an even greater secure procedures in place to get to that area, because that's where the equipment is stored. That's where you probably have your classified information, and it's not uncommon to have an even further restricted area in those really important places. And so, to answer your question, no, I don't think that was any greater concern. In fact, it may have been even less risky, given some potential additional security, given the operations that go on there.
All right, very much. I appreciate your help. And if you just stay on the line with me, I know you can hear the TV as well. We're going to play something that I think you're going to want to hear, Admiral Snyder. We are hearing the moment that dispatchers in the Fort Stewart area were told about the shooting today. You're about to listen to a series of 3 first responder dispatch calls, all within a 90-second period. So let's all listen to that for the first time together.
Mag Station 1, mutual aid request for a gunshot wound on Fort Stewart. It'll be building 8420 2nd Brigade, 8420 2nd Brigade, gunshot wound, mutual aid. There's possibly 5 patients. They have both of their EMS trucks on scene. The scene is clear. Everything is secure. We don't know who has what. Multiple people injured. Yeah, I am landline with Fort Stewart on the 911 call. They have an active shooter on Fort Stewart.
So Admiral Snyder, we're joined now by Heather Crawford, who's been following this as well. Thanks for being with us as well. And the other thing, too, that we wanted to point out is that there was quite a distance to go from the military base with at least 2 of these people who were critically injured to Memorial Hospital, which is a level 1 trauma hospital. 45 minutes by car, but by ambulance, 30 minutes. So that must have been very important to get those to that level 1 hospital, that trauma center. And from what you've just heard on the phone, could you hear that from the dispatchers, Lieutenant or Admiral Snyder?
Well, it seems to me like there's a little bit of uncertainty. It was clear during that call that the local Army Emergency Medical Services were already on the scene, which of course is good news. And it's not uncommon to respond more than perhaps you think you need to, because you don't know what's going to develop. So my sense is that either the casualties they had already come upon were greater than they could handle, or there was just a concern that there may be more casualties. So let's use our mutual aid agreement with the local community to bring more help in there.
All right. Stay with us if you would, Admiral Snyder. We are all craving some more information at this point. We've gotten the key piece of information that the shooter is in custody. We know it was a male soldier. 5 soldiers shot. They are at this point still alive. Perhaps 2 in critical condition, but we're going to be getting some more information very soon, Heather.
That's right, Jeannie. And you know, anytime you have an active shooter situation like this, the facts come in, they're fluid, it's an evolving situation. What we know is that we're going to have an official news briefing at 3:30. So in a little less than an hour and a half, we are going to get an official update on what transpired there this morning. At this point, what we know is that at least 5 soldiers have been shot on base there at Fort Stewart. Officials saying that the shooter is a male soldier, and so right now he is in custody. I'm sure being questioned, trying to get some information. The question we all have is why? Why did something like this happen today on what is supposed to be a very secure facility? And we know all different kinds of agencies are there right now investigating while these 5 soldiers are being treated for the injuries. Right now we have not heard of anyone dying. So we know 5 soldiers being treated right now, 2 of them at a trauma center.
And we just heard from you, Admiral Snyder, talking about this has happened before where we've had people on base shooting people on base. You mentioned Fort Hood, Pensacola, the Naval Yard in D.C. and Hawaii. Is there anything at all on higher levels of government that's being discussed to be able to prevent anything like that? Is that even possible?
Yeah, you know, as we talked about earlier, a lot of the insider threat training that's happening now is as a result of those events. And as always in these cases, after the event, there will be a very in-depth review of what happened to identify perhaps any gaps in security or additional security that could have been used in these cases to try and prevent what happened.
And what could a possible gap even be? I'm thinking about a military base, tight security, defending our country. What could that even turn out to be?
It could be, you know, all the way before this incident of a failure to identify a person who could potentially do this activity. It could be a lax in security to gate, very uncommon. You know, that's where this insider threat that we talked about, a person that's already part of that organization, is a real danger because they have the valid ID, they have the valid reason to be there, and perhaps a valid reason to access weapons for training. And so that acute awareness of the people that are around you and how they may be acting, and then the willingness to come forward is very important.
And Admiral Snyder, NBC News is reporting that this is not the first serious shooting at Fort Stewart. An Army sergeant was killed there on the base back in 2022. It was a 30-year-old Sergeant Nathan Hillman from Pennsylvania, who was an Afghan veteran. He died during that shooting in December 2022. That case still making its way through the court system. But having had something like this happen there before and then now having this today, kind of walk us through the types of training that bases like this go through to prepare for the unthinkable happening.
You know, we talked about the personal insider threat piece. There's also very frequent security drills where they will enhance the level of security or test the current level of security to make sure that procedures that are in place, like identification checking.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Right now, this is live coverage from our content partner in Jacksonville, Florida, First Coast News. We want to step away from this breaking news and get to breaking news much closer to home, actually at home here in our area. So Chester County Sheriff's deputies are in the area, and this is going to the Chester County Sheriff's Department. The Chester County Sheriff's deputies are in the area of the Catawba River Bridge on Chester Highway in reference to a deceased body located in the water. According to the Sheriff's Office there, they are working closely with Lancaster County Sheriff's Office and the Chester County Swift Water Rescue Team for recovery efforts. And right now, according to this post, they had no further information at this time. But again, this is a bit of breaking news that we are following right now. Again, a dead body was found in the area of the Catawba River Bridge on Chester Highway. We're going to get you a map just to give you an idea, but in case you just missed it, I want to come in here with some breaking news and something else that we're following that is here at home. Chester County Sheriff's deputies are in the area of the Catawba River Bridge on Chester Highway in reference to a deceased body located in the water. So this is a look at that area where deputies are, where they found that body. You can see where that red mark is more in that area, but this is a look at what's around it. You can see the Catawba Fish Camp. You can see some other businesses like a Western Union is in the area. Church is nearby. A cemetery is also looks like it's not too far away from this incident. And this is not far from, it looks like not far from the Lancaster County line. Because I see the Lancaster County Airport and Lancaster County Sheriff's Office is there helping them investigate as well. So there are numerous things nearby. The Catawba River Bridge on Chester Highway where deputies are. Again, they found a deceased body in the water near the Catawba River Bridge on Chester Highway. So the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office is out there, and the Chester County Swift Water Rescue Team, along with deputies, are there for recovery efforts. We don't know a name. We don't know what sort of led up to this. I hate to sound cliche when I say that, but we don't know, and we're still working to figure out what exactly led up to this, who this person is or was, I should say. And again, as more information becomes available, we will continue to bring that to you. We do have a crew on the way to the scene, and as soon as we get their shot up, we want to take you there live, because this is breaking news. Again, Chester County Sheriff's deputies finding a dead body in the water near the Catawba River Bridge. They're not too far from the Lancaster County line. They're in Chester County. All right, so we want to get to another big news story that we are following today. Have been since this morning, and we just got word there's a news conference at 3:30 regarding the active shooter incident at Fort Stewart in southeast Georgia. We do know the new information at this time that a male soldier is in custody. He's a suspect in this case, and this is coming from our content partners there at First Coast News and Jacksonville. They have confirmed that, and we do know 5 soldiers have been shot. It just happened on the base, and the shooter has been arrested. As I want to mention, that shooter is being reported is a male soldier at the base. So let's take a listen in. We'll sit back into the coverage from First Coast News in Jacksonville, Florida. Let's take a listen in.
This happened there on the base in Georgia, Fort Stewart, and that the shooter has been arrested. An official telling ABC News that shooter is a soldier. What is false? Social media post on the shooter's identity. That has not been released as far as who the shooter is. And what we don't know is who he is, what the motive for the shooting was, or the victim's condition. However, we have learned that 2 of the soldiers who were shot have been transferred to a trauma center. So I want to ask you about the response. This happened on a military base. Speak to the response efforts after it first came in that shots had been fired on base.
So it happened on a military base, which is an isolated area.
Right.
It's enclosed, it's secure for the most part. That made it relatively great for law enforcement officials, military police, to respond immediately because they're there. They don't have to come from a long way. They're already there. And then they coordinate with the outside agencies under their multi-agency agreement, because you want to utilize all the resources that you can after this happens. You want to contain the shooter. You want to contain the area that he is in so that he can't get away, get off the base. And you want to make sure everybody around is safe. So they locked down the schools. They did all their due diligence, if you will. The response time was great, number one. And then number two, the apprehension of this particular guy was great as well, because within 39 minutes or so after the last person had been shot, he was already in custody. So that's a great response time.
And so talk to that, because 39 minutes, we don't know what he was doing during those 39 minutes. And we also, I guess, don't know at this point if everyone was shot around the same time. 39 minutes, though, you're saying is good response time.
That's a good response time for an apprehension, because you've got a base. He could have been hiding somewhere. He could have been contemplating what he wanted to do with his life. He could have been thinking about, well, I'm going to surrender. I'm going to be obvious and let them catch me. Don't know at this point. The investigation is going to be very interesting because they're going to answer all those questions. They're going to determine a motive. They're going to determine what he did after he shot, why he shot these individuals. Was it just the first 5 that he came across? Was one of the persons or more than one of the persons a target that he wanted to hit? What was the nature of this particular incident happening? They're going to find all those things out.
You know, so often in mass shootings, the shooter either takes his own life or is killed by police. But in this case, this shooter we know is now in police custody. So take us through what's likely happening right now.
So then you had an all alert manhunt for this particular individual. Once they got him into custody, they can assure the public as well as all of the military personnel that everything is safe now. We're not on lockdown mode anymore. So they would take him in, they're going to interrogate him, but while they're doing that, they're going to be talking to his family members, his friends, his neighbors. They're going to go through his go through his house where he lives. They're going to do all of that, and they're going to be extra careful because there have been times where bombs have been planted into the residence of these individuals and set up as a booby trap when law enforcement officials go in. So it's going to be a long, lethargic process that they're going to have to go through to try to get information out of him. Now, the compelling question is, did he want to get captured to try to make a name for himself and become what he would consider famous? Did law enforcement officials as well as military personnel find him and bring him into custody without incident? And as you said, a lot of times they'll take their own lives because of the cowardly act that they just committed, and then them being cowards themselves. They'll take their own lives, and the court process, all those things are over with. So we've got a living, breathing suspect that we can talk to, that they can talk to, get as much information out as they can.
And the big other question that I have is, were there warning signs? Every time something like this happens, the first thing we have to ask is, could this have been prevented? Who did he tell? What did he say? Were there red flags? And you know, we have a lot of military bases here on the First Coast, and we want to keep all of our soldiers safe in situations like that. Well,
you know, you prepare for things like this, but you never know when it's going to happen. You never know if or when it's going to happen. So you have to be reactive in this case. But when you talk about warning signs, we don't know enough about the suspect right now to see if there were any. Did he write? Did he write anything down? Did he talk to somebody about it? That's all a part of the investigation. Or was there warning signs that were ignored by certain individuals? Maybe if one of the 5 was a target, maybe he or she can shed some light on this particular individual if that person is known to them. So right now, a lot of unanswered questions that investigators are trying to get.
And that goes back to the motive. Was this something terrorist related? Was this a beef with an individual and there was collateral damage? Those questions we just have not answered. We don't have the answers, but we are expecting that briefing today at 3:30 from the base commander. What we do know is that 5 soldiers have been shot there at Fort Stewart in Georgia. That's about 45 minutes from Savannah. And we are working to gather new information. Ken, talk about the collaborative effort from from all the different law enforcement agencies when something like this happens on a military base?
Yeah, so you have to have a collaborative effort for something like this, because you want to deploy all available resources, air unit, ground unit, K9 unit, and just a lot of boots on the ground to try to secure the scene, secure that area, and find the suspect. All those things are prepared for, they're practiced, they have an agreement for it. When the military calls outside police are ready to go, they understand their job. The dispatchers are communicating with each other, so there won't be any miscommunication whatsoever. They're communicating with each other, and the outside dispatchers are talking to their people, the military people, dispatchers are talking to them, and then they can collude together in an effort to find the individuals to secure the areas, do all their due diligence, and that's why this went so well in a timely fashion, because they coordinated it very well. So this could be a training poster for other bases and law enforcement agencies.
Yeah, that's the good news. Speak to the lockdown today, because we know that it happened this morning, and then part of Fort Stewart was the lockdown was lifted, but one part was still under lockdown, and now it's all been lifted. But when they have different areas lifted from lockdown, but other areas are still staying intact, what does that tell you? Was that possibly a search to see if there could have been another suspect?
Well, we don't know when the last one wasn't lifted, so the suspect may have still been at large. Don't know at this particular time. But when you've got a hot suspect, somebody that's not been captured, and you're looking for them, you want to lock down as much of the interior as well as the outer, as many of them as you possibly can, as long as that suspect is at large, because you never know where they're going to go. You know, suspects have burst into people's houses, they burst into schools, armed, and they're armed and dangerous. So you want to lock it down, make sure they're all good, they're on standby, waiting for law enforcement officials to lift that up. So when you have, so say that you had 4 areas of lockdown, and you release 3 of the 4. They're still searching, they're still looking, just to make sure, one, that as you said, there's not an accomplice, and 2, that particular suspect may have still been at large at the time.
And while the suspect has been apprehended now, the investigation is far from over. Now they're going to everywhere he's visited recently, his home, as you mentioned, and that part of the investigation just getting underway as they try to learn everything they can about him, his presence on social media, any potential warning signs. What do you think are the biggest takeaways at this point, just a few hours removed from this mass shooting?
Well, they're going to have a press conference at 3:30. That's going to give us a little more information, possibly more than what we have right now. Some of the questions more than likely won't be answered at this particular time, because the investigation is really just beginning, and it depends on the cooperation of the suspect. Is he going to talk? Does he want to remain mute? Exercise his Fifth Amendment right? Don't know at this particular time, but they're going to try to get as much information as they can. If he's not talking, then they're going to garner information from searching his home, talking to his family members, talking to his neighbors and friends, and whatever. They can get information that way that can lead them to things that they want to know that he may not say.
And at this point, do we know who is leading this investigation?
Well, it'll be the Army, because it happened in their federal jurisdiction. So it'll be the Army in cooperation with the locals. But the locals, the main thing that they have to do is write a supplement report as to what their actions were. That's particularly it. But this is the jurisdiction of the federal government, the United States Army. So they will take the lead on, the federal agencies will take the lead on this, and then the other agencies that participated just have to write a supplement report as to, I responded, I searched this area, that area, I knocked on this door, whatever they did, they have to put that in the supplement report. All that's added. So when the incident may be like this, but the reports are going to be like that.
Right. Everybody crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's. And at this point, looking at what has transpired today, you feel like everything has gone by the book as far as the response from police, from first responders?
Based on what I've seen and heard, it was executed perfectly. You know, they got the call, they responded, the outside agencies responded, and within 39 minutes, he was apprehended. The areas were cleared, the lockdowns were lifted. It was the perfect storm.
Okay, and more information going to be released coming up in just about an hour. And I think we have some new video. Jeannie, let's send it over to you.
That's right, we have some new video tonight. There was Taken by somebody who was on the base, that video taken by somebody on the base. And what you're going to see in this video is very, very short. So because of that, we're going to replay it for you a couple of times, but it shows law enforcement just flying down a road. We're unable to read the street sign, but here's the video right now. We do know this is on the base. We apparently have slowed this down just a little bit so that you can see what's happening. That was during all of this chaos this morning. And then that is on the base as well. We've also gotten another piece of video, and that's going to show a soldier telling people on the base that they are now on lockdown. And this is from earlier today. Do we have that piece of video in? We do. Okay, so we can show this to you. He is saying that the lockdown is now lifted. So let's listen to that. Okay, I know that was a little bit difficult to hear, but he's saying that we're on lockdown. Do you need anything else? He's talking to all the people to make sure that they are sheltering in place and being careful. And I want to just tell you, just to catch you up if you're just joining us, the initial lockdown order from the military at Fort Stewart, as you're looking at this video there from on base, the commander has issued a lockdown in the 2 ABCT area, that's the brigade training area, for Fort Stewart, including Wright and Evans Army Airfield. Now we know that Fort Stewart, all of Fort Stewart, including Wright and Evans Army Airfield, they are no longer on lockdown. The all clear has been given for that whole area. But people were told to stay inside, to lock all their windows, lock their doors, close their doors, and keep their telephone lines open. So right now we want to go live now to our own Zach Wilcox. He has some updates for us from his end. Zach?
Yeah, Jeannie, we just pulled up here. It's about a little over a 2-hour drive to make it. What you're looking at behind us in the distance, admittedly, is the front gate onto Fort Stewart. Admittedly, we were expecting to see some sort of flashing lights or a police scene. Didn't see anything like that when we pulled up. It kind of just looked like a regular day. You can see some of the cars that are slowing down as they approach the gate behind me here. We checked in at the visitor's office. They told us to come to this education center. We'll show you that. Cool. If you can just turn a little bit more, we'll show you kind of where we're at. So this is the education center they have just off the base. They've asked us to meet with some of the leaders here, some of the officials here at 3 o'clock. Then they're going to bring us over to the gate at 3:30 for a briefing to give us all the information that they have. And so then we'll just show you if we can continue rotating a little bit further this way. You can see what we can see of the base itself. And again, what you'll notice is not any kind of flashing lights. I realize that we're a few hours removed from when this initially got on our radar, but not a scene that we can see from this far away. This is a huge base. We know it's one of the largest, if not the largest, east of the Mississippi. So I don't know the entire layout at this point. We just pulled up. The other thing I wanted to mention is we know that Liberty County schools up here in Georgia.
All right, I want to pop back in. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. We are at the top of the hour. That is live continuous coverage there from our content partner in Jacksonville. They have a reporter there on scene at Fort Stewart as they cover the active shooter incident there at the base. We can report a male soldier is in custody. 5 soldiers were hurt during this incident. However, there's no active threat now that lockdown has been lifted for some time, but there is a reporter there on scene from our content partner there in Jacksonville, Florida. They made the drive up to Fort Stewart in southeast Georgia. All right, we want to step away from this and we want to come back home to another important story. A story that has impacted a lot of folks here in the area. We are weather alert. Correct me if I'm wrong, Becca. We are still weather alert.
So we're
ending that. Okay. That's why we bring Becca Birdsall in. And so, and that's what happens with Live Impact News. I asked the question and she answered. But we dealt with a lot of rain yesterday, a lot of flooding. The rain, I haven't been outside in a while. We're in the studio. What does it look like outside at the moment?
Yeah, in the Charlotte area, it is almost completely dried up. Other than a few sprinkles here and there, the rain for the most part is for our most eastern counties, and that is continuing to push off. It's weakening out. Things are beginning to quiet down, and the worst is certainly over. But we have been through a lot in the past 48 hours, also with cool temperatures, clouds, and a lot of rainfall out there. So you can see from our Mr. Sparky Carolina Cam Network, especially east of Charlotte. That is where we have a couple of showers still out there, especially over towards Anson County. You can also see some water droplets on the camera there, certainly reduced visibility, especially up towards our Dallas camera that is northern Gaston County, but just a couple droplets over towards Lake Norman. This is Doppler radar now. This is actually a loop of the past 6 hours showing that heavy rain coming across the Charlotte area this morning. Now it's weakening off as it continues to push off to the east. We do have flash flood warnings out east of the area over towards Raleigh, but right now no flood concerns at the moment for the Charlotte area. That also includes up to the mountains. You can see again east of 77 and east of Charlotte, this is where we have a couple of downpours, and that is over towards Chesterfield County, Chesterfield, Patrick, portions of Lancaster County, Wadesboro, Rockingham, but this is all pushing to the east fairly quickly. So I'd say over the next hour and a half, we'll really start to see a drying period across much of the area. Flood watch does continue for Stanley County, also Richmond as well until midnight, but those are the only counties that are encompassed under that flood watch as that rain continues to move out. This is a look at rainfall totals for the past 48 hours. I'd say the big swath of red that you see over towards York, portions of Chester, all the way into portions of Mecklenburg County as well. That is 3 to over 5 inches of rainfall. Now we normally get this in a month. This is about a month's worth of rainfall just in the past 48 hours, which is why it overwhelmed some of the creeks, rivers, and streams along the Charlotte Metro. But the worst is over, and there will be a couple of chances for some showers over the coming days, but certainly not the soakers that we saw just from the past 48 hours. So futurecast rainfall as we head from now all the way through about Saturday. A few locations could pick up a few hundredths of an inch. That's going to be about it. Outside now, 71 in Charlotte, 72 in Lancaster, also towards Durant, 69 in Albemarle, 66 in Boone, and 71 over towards Morganton. We'll continue to see temperatures warm up a degree or two for the high, but this is pretty much where we're going to stay. Cloudy, dreary, muggy, again with those rain chances really tapering off. Now, the record for the lowest high temperature is 70 degrees back in 1880, and our high temperature today so far has been 72 degrees. So we are very close to that, but not going to be breaking a record for today. Also, random weather stat. This is the coldest first 5 days in Charlotte since 1879 with an average temperature of around 72 degrees. So futurecast, here's what you can expect for rain chances going forward. This evening, we'll hang on to the cloud cover, the muggy conditions, but the rain for the most part going to be out of here. As we head into Wednesday afternoon and evening, there is going to be, again, rain chances dwindling down, but by Thursday morning, I do think most of us will start off dry, just a little bit damp from the previous mornings. Then as we head towards Thursday afternoon, just a isolated spotty shower in the forecast. We'll continue that into Friday, but it's really not looking like much. So that's what, when I say the worst is over, that's what we can expect. Weekend, 20% chance of a downpour, but most locations will stay dry. It has been very cool the past couple of days, especially from now all the way into Saturday, where we really made that, we flipped the switch from the 90s into the 70s. We will be finally warming up over the next couple of days, but it's going to be steady. We'll still be in the 70s through the end of the work week, then feeling a little bit more like summer as we head towards this weekend. And especially for next week, we'll be back closer to normal with highs in the lower 90s. So this weekend, I think we'll see a good amount of sunshine, mix of sunshine and clouds, isolated chance for a downpour, high temperatures, middle 80s, so a little bit cooler than the average high for this time of year, which is right around 90. We're checking in on the tropics. Of course, we do have Tropical Storm Dexter out there, but we are watching this weak low pressure system that is formed alongside a stationary front that does have a 30% chance of tropical cyclone development over the next 7 days as it continues to drift to the east. Something to watch for, but not really going to have an impact on our weather at the moment, but if this does strengthen into a tropical depression or a storm, could bring some rip current impacts to the East Coast. So far we've had Andrea, Barry, Chantal, and Dexter. So the next official name on the list is Aaron and Fernand. So 7-day forecast, and this is not the updated one with the weather alert taken off. So, but just ignore that. We're no longer weather alert today because the rain for the most part is out of here. Just got a couple of downpours for our most eastern counties, and that is on the way out. Only a 20% chance of a downpour going forward from now into this weekend. Temperatures slowly warming up as well. We said goodbye to summer almost with these fall-like temperatures.
Did you say no?
I'm a summer girl, you know that.
I kind of miss summer too. It disappeared.
I like to splish splash. I want to splish splash.
So does my dog.
Yeah, right.
Here's the thing, though. We got summer, but we got summer in full force. Like we got like triple digits.
I mean,
it was a lot.
She came in a little fast and strong. Yeah, she came in a little hot.
After the hottest July, this is the coolest, almost one of the coolest Augusts on record so far. It's
like we didn't just get like cooler temperatures. We got like a lot of rain.
Yeah.
So it's like, welcome to August. It's cooler, but here's the rain. And so I'm glad that
It's been dreary.
Yeah, I'm glad
we
that
need the sun to come back out.
I want more pool opportunities.
You will get more pool opportunities.
I want to lay on the river.
This weekend.
Yeah.
She just said it. Well, and then next week it's going to be like in the 90s.
Yes, back in the 90s.
I just don't want to get hated on because I like summer.
I wasn't hating. I was just saying we got hit with triple digits. It was really, really hot.
Yeah.
I like the cool off.
I like summer, but I did not like what we had in July. Triple digits, feeling like 110.
It felt like fall yesterday. It didn't feel like fall today, but it felt like fall yesterday. So, I'll take it. So, yeah. Becca, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Becca.
All right. So, weather, a big story here, but we want to get to a big story nationally in Southeast Georgia. A story that we've been following since the very beginning of the stream. And let me take you here. This is live coverage from our content partner in Jacksonville, First Coast News. They continue their coverage of the active shooter incident at Fort Stewart. Now, we can say that there's no active threat there's no active threat. The lockdown has been lifted. They got the call just before 11 a.m., law enforcement about this incident. A male soldier is in custody, and we do know 5 soldiers were hurt. But again, no active threat, and lockdown is lifted. Now, we're expected to get an update and a press conference at 3:30 at Fort Stewart or around Fort Stewart. I know
Colin and Jed will bring that to you live when it does happen.
Yes. So we will have it here on Live Impact News as soon as it starts. But let's get back into their coverage for First Coast News in Jacksonville, Florida.
Happen here, but it can happen anywhere, at any time. So we just don't know. You can't predict when it's going to happen. If we could, it never would have happened because the law enforcement officials would be proactive to stop it.
Well, I mean, I can see the all clear if someone has died, if the shooter has died, but in this case, he's still alive. I mean, how do we know he didn't have an accomplice?
Well, he's in custody. The suspect is in custody, and the police and military have thoroughly went through their protocol to determine that he acted as a lone wolf. So at some point, you just have to trust what law enforcement and the military says.
All right, well, we'll go with that. We'll just keep those thoughts and prayers going to all those folks and doctors and nurses and everybody working on the 5 soldiers who are in 2 hospitals right now. And so, Heather, we're going to toss it back over to you. And you just heard Ken Jefferson saying that so often in these cases, when it's a military involved, there's somebody who's not of rank. And if CNN is correct in their reporting, their sources are saying that this is a sergeant. So perhaps we could ask Admiral Snyder about what he sees into that.
That's right. And Admiral Rick Snyder is on the phone with us now. Thank you so much for sticking with us through this continuing coverage. The fact that CNN is now reporting that the shooter was a ranked member of the military, a sergeant. Speak to that and your thoughts.
Yeah, so a sergeant is a mid-grade enlisted rank. It's typically one of the first positions where you get some sort of a leadership role It's the 5th rank up in the enlisted community, so E5. Typically, they've been in the Army 4 to 6 years. They've been through some advanced training. They've probably been through a deployment or two, and so they're very much the day-to-day on the deck or in the field leadership for some more junior soldiers.
We are expecting a press briefing from the base commander coming up in about 45 minutes at 3:30 this afternoon. What are the questions, the information you're looking for that you expect we will get answered in that 3:30 briefing?
I think a lot of what we're going to hear is confirmation from the direct source of a lot of the information we've been picking up from various places. There probably won't be a lot of new details, but there may bring some clarity to sort of what we've heard in bits and pieces, and hopefully some discussion about the steps going forward that are going to happen from an Army perspective, and it would be hopefully an update on the condition of those soldiers that have been injured at this point.
Right. We know, according to base officials, 5 soldiers have been shot, 2 of them taken to a trauma center. As you stand back and look, here we are just a few hours removed from when this active shooter opened fire this morning on the base there at Fort Stewart. What stands out to you the most?
You know, it was a very rapid and correct response. You know, with a gunman on the loose, 36 or 39 minutes can seem like a very long time, but given all of the variables in this, that was a very quick response. 5 people have been injured. If time would have been longer in between the occurrence and the response, we could potentially be seeing a lot more injured people. So I thought the response was very good. And the fact that this was limited to what we've seen so far, I think, indicates that a lot of the training we have been doing was successful. This rapid move to a lockdown or remain in place, shelter in place, had people do the right things, and people understood that, and I think that minimized the damages that came out of this.
Admiral Snyder, are you able to see our newscast right now? Can you see the video we're showing on the screen?
I can. It's typically a little bit delayed, so let me see if I can catch up to you.
Okay, so we're seeing a live look right now. Our Zach Wilcox and photographer Cole are there on the scene at Fort Stewart, and it looks like a bunch of soldiers there gathering. I believe, Zach, this camera set up near the education building. What do you make of this? Is this just typical training? Is there anything you can read into this video, this live picture at Fort Stewart?
It may be. I mean, typically when we have circumstances like this, as soon as information becomes available, leadership wants to talk to the soldiers and make it clear what they know, what they don't know, what's going to be happening next. So perhaps this is just a gathering for a debrief from leadership or some sort of a muster to talk about what's going to be happening next.
And so walk us through, we know that military bases train for situations like this. After the shooter is in custody, and as we've been mentioning, it doesn't always happen like this. Oftentimes they end up dead, but this shooter is now in police custody. What happens now?
Yeah, well, as was mentioned before, with the shooter, there'll be a very set protocol to interrogate, find out what they can, make sure there's no other threat at, elsewhere at the house or at the unit, et cetera, et cetera. From the military side, it's really about reassuring your folks. This is a traumatic experience for everyone involved, going on lockdown, potentially having soldier mates of yours that have been injured. And so it's a reassurance that the response was good, that things are safe now, that we're here to support you, and that in many cases you'll talk about we still have a mission to do. So you let the system work out, you let the investigation happen, and again, put your arms around everybody and make sure they're okay.
A mission that our military service members do so well. They still have a job to do, and we know they will get back to work. But When you talk about the mental health, and we do not know this presumed shooter's mental health, if this was a mental health crisis, if there was some ulterior motive, there are resources for our military members. We know PTSD is a real struggle for a lot of service members. Kind of just speak to the mental health aspect.
Yeah, as you alluded to, it certainly is a concern and has been for a while and has gotten a lot of attention, which is a good thing. And there are a lot of resources. There are resources both in the military and outside the military that are available to service members. There's hotline numbers for active duty service members, for veterans, for retirees, and of course a lot of civilian health care that's available. So the resources are there. We just have to encourage people to use them.
Absolutely. Admiral Snyder, thank you so much. And if you will stick with us, just to recap right now, we know that 5 soldiers shot this morning at Fort Stewart. Officials saying that the shooter is a soldier. CNN reporting a sergeant was the rank. And that man is being questioned right now by police while those 5 soldiers are being treated for their injuries. Jeannie, let's send it back over to you now.
Thank you very much. And we've been talking all day now for hours about how large this facility is. This area of Fort Stewart, one of the largest Army bases in the entire United States. And that's where our Zach Wilcox is right now. He's live. And Zach, this is our second time to talk to you. What are you seeing right now?
Yeah, Jeannie, you mentioned because this base is so large, it's hard to have a full perspective, especially since we're not obviously going to be on the base today. We're just outside of it. I figured we'd show you the shot that you guys were just showing, I think, a little earlier while Heather was talking with Rick Snyder. And you can see this group that came out of the education center. And we heard somebody bellowing, if you will, bellowing orders at them, maybe just to get them to line up. But so that's kind of the main visual that we've had since we've been here. We know that in a few minutes we're going to have an official from the base come out and meet us and move us to an area closer to the gate where they're going to give us the briefing. I figured I'd show you the gate as well if we can turn here. It's amazing how fast all this happened, because we know that we started hearing about it around 11, and then we know that by 11:30 they had the shooter in custody. And then by about 2 o'clock is when they reopened the front gate here and lifted the lockdown. So when we first pulled in, it was about 10, maybe 15 after 2. So it was a lot of cars that were just now probably getting their access back onto the base that have been waiting for a couple of hours to try and get on. So there was a longer line. Now it seems like things are moving smoothly onto the base. We've adjusted a little here so that if we keep turning, sorry to make Cole keep turning here, but we can see a little bit. That fence right there is the line, the property line to be on the base. So you can see a little bit on the base. A lot of cars moving around now that lockdown's been lifted. I'm sure folks are getting to where they've been trying to go really all late morning, early afternoon here, now that the gate has been reopened. But hopefully we'll have some more information to relay to you guys soon. Right now we can really just express what we've been seeing in just the few minutes that we've been here since we arrived. And as I mentioned, we passed by a couple of Liberty County schools. We saw some flashing lights there, and they're pretty close to the base. So we thought that it might have something to do with what's going on the base, but then it turns out that was just police directing traffic for the parents that were picking up their kids after those schools went into a soft lockdown for a couple of hours today as well. But again, the lockdown lifted here at the front gate, and this is really the only angle that we've been able to see so far onto the base. And we've got all these cars that are now slowly matriculating on through back onto the base after it was shut down. Really, the front gate was shut down for about 3 hours. So, and again, we've got the training center here, the education center. That's as close as we've been able to be, just outside of the base property line. And so hopefully here in the next couple of minutes, in fact, we're probably going to pack up and move a little bit so that we can be in a place for the escort to pick us up, to bring us on to closer to the base property toward the front gate, so that we can have that briefing for you guys and ask all those questions that we just heard you guys asking. Hopefully we'll get a lot of that information clarified, the reports that we're starting to hear about some of the details about what happened here. But for now, we're just kind of in a little bit of a waiting game, trying to see if we can get those updates for you. And as soon as we have them, obviously we'll be bringing them to you. But we will wrap it up here at Fort Stewart for now. Zach Wilcox, First Coast News, on your side.
Zach, while I still have you, do you have any sense on your position in comparison to where the active shooting actually happened?
Not at this point, Jeannie. That is something that I probably should be looking into here to try and get an idea of where everything is on the base. I admittedly have not been to this base before, so I don't know exactly how things are spread out, but maybe we can get a better idea of that, especially as we move around a little bit and kind of get a little bit of a better lay of the land. This is just the first gate that we were able to get to. Fortunately, it's the gate that we're supposed to be at for the briefing, but we can get an idea, because as you guys have mentioned, this is a huge base, so hopefully that'll give us an idea of how far away from this front gate we are to where the actual shooting happened. and where that initial lockdown was.
Yeah, we understand it's what it's like to get on the scene for the first time, someplace you haven't been before, but we appreciate that, and we'll hear from you hopefully with a lot more answers at 3:30, and we'll be carrying all of that live and also on First Coast News Plus and on our website as well. Zach, so much appreciation for what you're doing up there. Thank you so much. And we're talking about how large this is. If you hadn't heard the statistic yet that we've been talking about, Ken, 10,000 people on Fort Stewart. That's civilian, military, and families. That's a huge base. And we were talking earlier, as you were pointing out, one of the first things you said when you saw the soldiers behind Zach right there was, see, they're out in the open. So you're smiling.
I wanted to reassure you that if they say it's all clear, it's all clear. I've been on that base before. It's been some years, but I've been on that base before, and you're talking about thousands of soldiers, and nobody was resting in their bunks when this thing happened. They put out an all alert for everybody, every available resource inside as well as outside to assure or reassure that they did their due diligence and found this particular person that's responsible for what happened, and then clear all the lockdowns.
So we were talking with Admiral Snyder about what could possibly be done on the federal level to try to prevent some of these things. Looking back at the history of mass shootings, it's not just at military bases, but we all remember Fort Hood. There were 13 people killed by that Army psychiatrist. That was back in 2009. There's a whole string of these things. I mean, from your law enforcement perspective, is there anything to do? That's the overall arching question here. The overarching question is, like, how do you stop this?
You don't stop it. You can't stop it because you can't predict when it's going to happen. You can prepare for it, and if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. They stayed ready. That's why they were able to respond the way they did. But there's no way you can stop it. If you could predict when it's going to happen, who's going to be responsible for it, it would never happen. So it's just an ongoing thing that we have to deal with, both on military bases and our schools and malls and anywhere in society. It can happen anywhere.
So prepare us for this news conference that's coming up now in less than 45 minutes here at 3:30, which we'll be carrying, of course, as we say, live. What is some information that they will not want to give out?
Some information that they may ascertain from the suspect right now, because they have to follow up with certain things. If he's talking to them, we don't know if he's going to be cooperative or not. There have been some suspects that just became mute and exercised their Fifth Amendment right and didn't say anything. And by not saying anything, what they're saying is, you figure it out. You know, you figure it out. If you think I had issues, if you think I had a motive, you figure it out. Put your law enforcement degree to work, whatever. So they're not going to disclose everything because there may be a person or persons that they need to contact that they don't want to give a heads up on, that they're looking for them and want to contact them to try to get information out of them or whatever. But if I was conducting the news conference after this horrific shooting, my main objective would be to have already notified the families of those soldiers that were shot and disclose who they are, what their jobs were at the particular base. I'll always also want to update information on the suspect, give his name, who he was, what his job was, because now once he does that, the reporters are going to start scurrying to get more information out to release to the public. And I would also reassure everyone listening under my voice that the base is safe, it's secure. It's as secure as it was prior to this incident happening. You can go about your normal duties as best as possible after this incident. And I would entertain a few questions and just call it a day and update as needed.
Okay, well, we'll see what they do. I appreciate the layout and the preparation for what we're going to hear now in about 35 minutes. Let's go back over now to Heather, and she has a map. First of all, if you could start off by, for the folks who haven't seen this yet, show us where this active shooting took place.
Yeah, so this is a map of Fort Stewart, and if you look right here, this is actually a map of the base from 2018, but the location where we're talking about is still in the same area. The active shooter was in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area, so that's in the top part of the screen right up here. It's pretty hard to read, but I can tell you the 2 roads that surround this area where the shooting started of Fort Stewart are Vanguard Road and Rally Point Road. If you've ever been on base there, Fort Stewart, Georgia, about 10,000 people on base, as Jeannie has been saying. This is about 40 miles from Savannah, Georgia. And Admiral Rick Snyder is on the phone with us. I know, sir, you have to go in just a moment, but here we are 4 hours from when the first reports started coming in about an active shooter on Fort Stewart. Just your final thoughts as you weigh in and look at what unfolded there today where 5 soldiers were shot. Admiral Snyder, do we still have you with us?
You do. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Just your final thoughts. I know you have to hop off in just a moment, but your final thoughts as you weigh in on what happened here at Fort Stewart just about 4 hours ago.
Yeah, of course. First of all, a tragic event, and we'll be thinking about those that were injured and everyone else involved that were victims of this. I think the response was really good. As mentioned, it was a large base. There's lots of people on there. They have weapons available, and yet in a very short time they were able to apprehend the suspect, get the people that needed it to medical care, and then open up the base again to reassure everybody. But it is also a great reminder that we do need to remain vigilant, that unfortunately things like this can happen anywhere at any time, so we have to be vigilant and aware of our surroundings. And then just this cooperation with the local community is always great to see. But my last comment is, of course, thoughts and prayers for the victims here.
Absolutely. Our heart goes out to all of those soldiers, all of the families who are being notified that their loved ones have been shot today. Again, we know that 5 soldiers shot this morning. It all started just before 11 o'clock this morning. Admiral Rick Snyder, thank you so much for your time, for your insight. And I just want to walk our viewers through a timeline of events as it unfolded today. It was 10:56 this morning when law enforcement was first dispatched for a possible shooting in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team Complex there at Fort Stewart in Georgia. Then about 5 minutes later, Fort Stewart is placed on lockdown due to a shooting threat. Emergency medical personnel dispatched to treat those wounded soldiers at 11:09, so 5 minutes after the base was put on lockdown. And then 39 minutes after we believe the first shots were fired, that shooter was apprehended. He is alive, according to CNN. He is a soldier. He has the rank of a sergeant there at Fort Stewart. What was his motive? What were the circumstances leading up to this? Those questions we do not know, but there will be a briefing with the base commander scheduled for 3:30, so in about 30 minutes. And the shooter in custody, 5 soldiers right.
We're going to come out of this coverage for a couple of minutes here. I'm Colin Mayfield on WCNC Plus inside the Impact News studio. We'll continue to obviously follow this developing news down at Fort Stewart, Georgia, where 5 soldiers have been shot in this active shooter incident. It was that at one point. Obviously, we know things have come to an end in some respects. The investigation now ongoing. We do have another situation in the area right now in Chester County, where deputies have found a body in the water near the Catawba River Bridge. Now, we will get an update in a couple of minutes and hopefully a live shot from our crew who is headed to that scene right now as we are on the air here on WCNC Plus. We do want to get to something, though, that is happening now as well. It deals with ICE. Mayor Karen Bass is joining the economic, labor, and community leaders to reaffirm apparently the city's commitment, LA's commitment to immigrant communities. This is highlighting the economic toll apparently that the mayor's office is saying that is really taking on businesses and the city as a whole from this coordinated response from ICE across California and specifically Los Angeles. So this is happening now. Let's go to it live.
Que el presidente Donald Trump nos trae aquí en nuestra ciudad. Hay más de 11,000 organizaciones comunitarias que no desisten de proveer servicios. Aquí estamos y no nos vamos. Hay servicios para todos y protección para todos. Búsquennos, estamos aquí para protegerlos y para avanzar nuestros derechos humanos. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Efraín. I want to share with you all that we are here, as we mentioned, in support of our businesses. I'm proud and thrilled to announce that our next speaker is the owner of La Chispa de Oro, a business serving the Latino community in our region. Help me welcome Melchor Moreno. He's not here? Okay, false alarm. We thank Melchor for his support, for his service to our community, and hopefully he'll come to our
are having some issues with this LA discussion with community leaders and immigrant communities as they double down on their efforts and the support for those communities despite all the coordinated efforts by ICE over raids and immigration issues there. So we're going to go back to the coverage now down in Fort Stewart, Georgia. Our news partners at First Coast News still covering this. They've been on the air for more than 4 hours at this point. So we're going to go back to it. It's great coverage, and it's happening now.
Pharmacist, and they all are expected to be waiting for the trauma patient before that person hits the door. So you can imagine how much resources have to be put into that and how much preparation. We also have blood available in the emergency department in a cooler right there, so we can give people blood instantly if we need it. Our blood bank can give us the next 6 units of blood within 20 minutes of that person rolling in the door, with us having the first 2 units available immediately. So here's a plug, guys. Give blood. We need it. So go out there and give blood. What else can I tell you about our trauma system?
I'll ask you a quick question. If you're just joining us now, you can't tell us any specifics about their condition in there, but tell me what it's like when it comes to treating somebody that is a service member. Is there a heavy weight that comes with that? Treating somebody who has signed up to serve our country? I know you treat everybody the same, but there's got to be a different feel in that ER right now.
Absolutely. Savannah is well known to be a military community. Our program director, our trauma program director, my boss basically, completed a naval career prior to becoming our trauma director here. And we've always had a very deep connection with the military. It adds a couple of things. There's usually more people to talk to. Right, the commanders are allowed to ask some details that, like other, if your boss came and asked this stuff, we couldn't tell you. So we have to talk to multi-level people. We also get a great deal of support. They all come in with a buddy, so there's always somebody there with them, which is real touching for us. But yeah, we really care about our military.
And being the only level 1 trauma center here in the area, what does that mean when things like this, incidents of this magnitude happen? How does that affect your staff and your readiness, and you guys being the only ones who can do the job?
Well, we have to be available all the time, and we have to have the resources there all the time, which it costs money. I mean, that's really you imagine all those people just being ready and waiting. We do other stuff between traumas. We take care of the patients that are already admitted, but really it's a great deal of resources that are in preparation. We are the only trauma center between Charleston, Jacksonville, and Macon. That is a huge catchment area, and people come in from across the street, and people come in from hours away, and we have to be there for everybody. And the number of our major traumas has gone up since when I came here 20 years ago. We did 1,200 major trauma admissions a year, about 2,000 admissions. Like, they're not really sick enough to be called trauma, but they get admitted to the trauma service. We're up to over 2,500 major traumas last year and almost 4,000 total admissions. So it's, as the population grows, so does the number of people that get hurt, and we're there to provide that service to the community.
Doctor, over the past couple of weeks, we've had a shooting at Oglethorpe Mall that required people to be treated here at Memorial. We've had this shooting on Fort Stewart today. You and your staff and everybody that works in this emergency room to treat gunshot victims, is there any, are they tired of having to treat gunshot victims? And I don't mean in the sense of they don't want to do it anymore, but is there any frustration seeing this continually come through your emergency room?
Well, it's always sad. We would all love to be able to, like me, I'd love to go teach scuba diving. That would be my dream, right? If no more people got injured, I could find something to do. That being said, gunshots often and of the type we see are young. It's just really sad, and we would like to do everything we can to prevent that. We are involved in the violence interdiction program, where we try to cut the cycle of violence when you have a shooting that may be gang-related, to try to go out and prevent the cycle of shootings. So we're involved in that stuff, and that's one of the things that Level 1 trauma centers have to do, is be part of trauma prevention programs, and we're very proud of that. So yeah, I would absolutely love it if people would stop shooting each other.
And specifically treating a gunshot wound, today some people were presuming might be some gunshot wounds, as well as, incidents we've seen in the last couple of weeks. What specifically goes into that?
Well, honestly, treating gunshot wounds can be the type of injury that requires the most technical expertise but the least amount of thought, right? If you are in a bad car accident, you can be injured and us not really see it. It can all be invisible and inside and internal bleeding. Gunshot wounds, honestly, you can think about it as there's a hole, sorry. Everything in between those holes has a hole in it. And you literally need to stop the bleeding or sew up any leakage of any other things that could be leaking, like your intestines and stuff. So it's actually, it can require good technical expertise, right? Somebody's bleeding to death, you have to stop that bleeding right away. But honestly, it's almost the least amount of mental exercise that we have to do, and we are very good at stopping that bleeding. So patients that hit the trauma bay door, if we know they're coming, we meet them at the door, they can get blood within 2 to 5 minutes if they need it, and we can get them into the operating room and operating on them in less than 15 minutes, which is a requirement for a trauma center. So we can really do that quickly. We're very good at that. And that's really what it entails. It's deciding right away if somebody's bleeding enough or has something injured that needs an operation, and getting them from the trauma bay, where we do that assessment, to the operating room where we actually fix the problem as fast as we can in a safe manner.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. We just want to thank you for all you're doing for those service members inside. I definitely noticed.
All right, that was Dr. William Bromberg from the Trauma Center here at Memorial Hospital. He was unable to talk about specifics as to the condition.
So you've been listening to that press conference there from Memorial Hospital. We were explaining earlier that 2 of the soldiers who were shot, some reports say 3, were taken to that Level 1 trauma center there at Memorial Hospital that's off base. And we were also explaining earlier that the car ride's about 45 minutes, but they did go by.
All right, we're going to get away from this for the time being. We have another live breaking story happening for you, which is what WCNC Plus is perfect for. Gloria Allred is having a presser with some Jeffrey Epstein victims right now. Let's listen in as we get more information, and we'll provide some context in a couple of minutes. But as this is live, let's go to it now.
When she met him at the Shutters Hotel in Santa Monica, California, Mr. Epstein said that he was a representative of Victoria's Secret and that he was interviewing and auditioning models to appear in the Victoria's Secret catalog. When Alicia realized that Epstein was using his position to touch her in a sexually inappropriate way, she left and reported him to the police. The details of what happened to Alicia in that room with Mr. Epstein were explained at a press conference that Alicia and I held in 2020. We will forward those details to the press who request them. Unfortunately, no prosecution ever took place. Alicia alleges that she would have been willing to testify against Jeffrey Epstein if the criminal case had been filed. But that never happened. Alicia feels that if Epstein had been forced to face the consequences of his criminal behavior at that time, perhaps many other women and children could have been spared from the sexual abuse and sex trafficking that many were forced to suffer. The failure of the criminal justice system to bring Jeffrey Epstein to meaningful justice was repeated in the cases of many other victims over decades after Alicia's experience with him, and resulted in Jeffrey Epstein's misconduct becoming worse and leading to child sexual abuse and trafficking of underage girls. It included his friend and co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell's conviction for conspiracy to entice minors to travel to engage in sexual acts, conspiracy to transport minors to participate in illegal sexual act, transporting a minor to participate in illegal sexual acts, sex trafficking conspiracy, and sex trafficking of a minor. She was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for her crimes. Now, decades later, the public and many of Epstein and Maxwell's victims are insisting that they want to know how Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were able to get away with their crimes for so many years. They also want to know who else may have enabled them or assisted them in their sexual exploitation and trafficking of women and children. They believe that the answers are in the unreleased files of the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York and the files of the former United States Attorney for the Southern District of Florida and the State Attorney's file in Miami. The battle to learn the truth of what really happened by releasing the files is now in the news almost every day. While the political class takes sides in this battle, the victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell are often ignored, and the toll that this is taking on them emotionally is often just a footnote rather than a focus of many stories. To date, a few of the more than estimated 1,000 victims of Jeffrey Epstein have decided to break their silence concerning what they believe should happen now and the aggravated trauma that they are experiencing because of the constant reporting of Jeffrey Epstein and Ms. Maxwell's names and the allegations against them. We understand and respect the decision of most victims and survivors to remain silent and not become embroiled in the court of public opinion. There are very good reasons not to become involved in what is happening. However, there are also good reasons for victims to break their silence and share with the public their opinions of what should happen next in this battle for truth, transparency, and justice. Decisions being made now by those who have the power to make them, and those decisions are affecting victims' lives and increasing their emotional suffering. Today, Alicia Arden has decided to be one of the survivors who will share her thoughts about some of those decisions. Once again, she is showing her courage by continuing to speak out about Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. I am sure that more victims will also break their silence in the future. Alicia will now read a statement responding to some of the key questions that reporters have been asking, but she hasn't previously answered them. After she speaks, I will also briefly respond to the question of whether and under what conditions I believe that the interview of Ghislaine Maxwell by Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche should be released. In addition, I'll speak to the issue of Congress and its upcoming hearings on Jeffrey Epstein and how it should involve victims in that process. And now it is my honor and pleasure to introduce Alicia Arden.
Thanks, Gloria. Thank you.
You can move over.
Move over here. The first question that I have is, should the files be released? And I believe yes. the files should be released. I'm tired of the government saying that they want to release them. So please just do it. And the next question is, should Miss Maxwell be pardoned? No, Ghislaine Maxwell should not be pardoned. She was convicted of sex trafficking of children. This is a terrible crime. Our next question is, did you ever meet Virginia Giuffre? Yes, briefly. Before Miss Maxwell was arrested, there was a meeting in New York with law enforcement, with either the FBI or Homeland Security, and with many other victims. And Virginia and I were there. And I said, "Hi, Virginia. Did you file a police report?" I did, in California. Virginia said, "No, I could not do that. I could not do that. I was around rich and powerful people." And at the same meeting with victims and their attorneys, the law enforcement agent at the podium asked the victims if they had any questions. Virginia asked why Maxwell was still walking around and free. And the agent responded that they were going to find her. And I'm very glad that Virginia, that she asked that question. I'm very glad. And another question is, do you want Miss Maxwell to testify? I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure if we can even believe her. But, I mean, I would like to know what the U.S. Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, asked her, and what she actually said to him. And the last question, how do you feel? It's a hard one for me. How do you feel about seeing Jeffrey Epstein in the news every single day and every night, all the time? And the story in the news almost every day and every night. It's very upsetting to me, and I cry with tears like I am now in my living room watching this all the time when I see it on the news every day. Jeffrey's in my brain, and I see him again and again, and I remember what he did to me in that hotel room. And I feel pain in my heart for myself and all for the other victims everywhere. And I see it every single day on the news.
Thank you. Okay. Here are a few of my additional comments. Regarding the question of whether or not Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche should release a transcript of the questions he asked of Ghislaine Maxwell and the answers that she gave in his 2-day interview of Ms. Maxwell, I believe that he should release the entire transcript of his more than 9-hour interview with her, including all of his questions and all of her answers. I'm aware that Ghislaine Maxwell, in addition to the other crimes for which she has been convicted, was also indicted on 2 counts of perjury. Ultimately, those charges were dismissed. However, the charges cannot be ignored, and other lies that she has told do have an impact on her credibility, and are part of the reason that some victims and their lawyers think that she should never have been interviewed. They do not believe whatever her responses were to the questions asked by Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. In my opinion, if the transcripts were released, then everything that Ms. Maxwell said in the interview should only be released if they're accompanied by corroboration of her statements and or evidence of inconsistent statements by her and or proof that she lied about some of her statements, if she did. In reference to the planned upcoming hearings in the fall by the House committees, I do believe that there should be a joint hearing by the House committees and a Senate committee. I'm aware that the House subcommittee is issuing subpoenas for many people in the list that they've already developed, including many former attorney generals. I think that they should add to that list former United States Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, Alex Acosta. In addition, I think they should subpoena Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and Attorney General Pam Bondi. Finally, victims and survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and or Ghislaine Maxwell should be invited to appear before the House and Senate committees to share how they were victimized by Jeffrey Epstein and Ms. Maxwell, the impact on them of these crimes, and how the criminal justice system has helped them or failed them. Victims should not be subpoenaed or compelled in any way to testify, but they should be invited. Some may wish to testify, but they should be invited and not compelled. And some may want to be anonymous, that is, they would not want their identities known or their faces shown. They should be supported in their request if that is their wish. We need change and new laws to be passed by Congress to better protect victims from the sexual predators. I look forward to sharing my ideas on this subject in the coming days. So finally, in a few moments I'll take some questions. Alicia will not be taking any questions, but we want to show you this police report. We should also have copies. Okay. I think on the other side. Okay, be careful. Okay, this side. Okay, go a bit back a little. Okay, so this is her police report. And I provided you copies of that.
Okay. I see.
All right. Oh, here's what I want.
She used the redacted name and the push.
Yeah, here. So, yeah, this is a 1987 Santa Monica Police Department crime report accusing Jeffrey Epstein of sexual battery of Alicia Arden. The redactions were made by, not by us, but this is the way we received the police report. Previously, I have asked for an unredacted copy, but I have not ever received it. Well, I'm going to try again. So, but you have that. Okay. And that's it. All right. And I'll leave this here if you want to take a look at it afterwards. Okay. Thank you. Come back and sit down. Okay.
Okay.
That's good. Okay. Okay. I'll be happy to take a few questions, if you have it.
Ms. Allred, other than holding a press conference like this, what more can you do to try to compel the government to release what you're asking for?
Great question. How can we compel the government to do it? I think that the answer is that the power lies in the representatives of the people in Congress, in the House and the Senate. We do not have any lawsuit pending, and therefore we cannot subpoena documents or individuals. I do represent, or have represented, 27 victims of Epstein, some Epstein and Maxwell, some underage, some adults. But any legal work we were doing for them has been accomplished. So having said that, you know, victims have become a political football for the Congress. We're really talking about law, not politics, but politics is now very much involved. And so the answer is it's going to be up to them. But individuals and groups have the power of public opinion, the court of public opinion. They can write to their elected representatives. They can also ask them the question of what they're going to do at town halls, many of which are being conducted across the country. Some of them very heated town halls with very frank and specific questions and allegations made by the people who are attending. But I think in the end,
all right, we've been waiting on an update from Fort Stewart, Georgia, on the 5 soldiers that had been shot in an active shooter incident earlier today. Let's go to this live now.
OMKO, and I'm the spokesperson for the 3rd Infantry Division. Today we're here to discuss the incident that took place earlier today on the north side of Fort Stewart installation at the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team footprint. In just a moment, I'm going to introduce you to Brigadier General John Lubis. That's spelled John, Lubis, Lubas. He's the commanding general of the 3rd Infantry Division. Brigadier General Lubis will make a statement regarding the incident and take a few brief questions. Before we begin, however, I'd like to go over just a couple things with you. We have limited time for questions, given that this is an ongoing investigation, and we may not have all the information that we can share, but we will try to be as transparent as possible. We will not release the name of any victims until the next of kin notification has been complete. We will not speculate as to any intentions, motives, or backstories, given that this is an ongoing investigation. When you ask your questions, we ask that you please give your name and the affiliation in case we need to do a follow-up. And it's a little hard to hear, so please speak up so that General Lubis can hear you and that you can hear him. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I will now turn it over to General Lubis.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us. This morning, shortly before 11 o'clock, an active duty soldier assigned to Fort Stewart, Georgia, shot and wounded 5 of his fellow soldiers here on Fort Stewart. Thankfully, all are in stable condition and all are expected to recover. The alleged shooter is in custody. We have reestablished security. I have lifted all lockdown measures on Fort Stewart, and there is currently no threat to the local community. I'd like to recognize and thank our Army law enforcement and medical personnel and our partners from local, state, and federal law enforcement and emergency services for their quick response and support. I would also like to thank the brave soldiers who immediately intervened and subdued the shooter. These soldiers, without a doubt, prevented further casualties. Our wounded soldiers were initially evacuated to Wynn Army Community Hospital right here on Fort Stewart. All arrived in stable condition, and 3 of the 5 required surgical intervention. 2 have been transported to Memorial Hospital in Savannah, Georgia for additional care. We have identified the alleged shooter as Sergeant Cornelius Radford, an automated logistics sergeant assigned to 2nd Brigade Combat Team. Sergeant Radford has not previously deployed to combat. Sergeant Radford has been interviewed by the Army Criminal Investigation Division and is currently in pretrial confinement, awaiting a charging decision by the Office of the Special Trial Counsel. Right now, our primary focus is first on caring for our injured soldiers and their families, and also supporting the soldiers of the Spartan Brigade. All of the families of the victims have been notified, and we're wrapping our arms around them and ensuring we provide them all the support that we can. Before I take questions, I want to remind you that this is an ongoing investigation, and we're still gathering questions. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll now take your questions.
General Lewis,
Yes, sir.
can you give us what unit he was assigned to and how long he served in the Army? You didn't mention it.
Yeah, he is assigned to one of our sustainment units here in 2nd Brigade Combat Team at Fort Stewart, and I will have to confirm how long he served with us. Yes, sir.
Russ Bynum with the Associated Press. As best you can, knowing it's so early, can you walk us through where this happened, what happened in the shooting, and were the victims subordinates of the sergeants, or were they people over him in rank?
Yeah, right now it's premature, and we're gathering a lot of the information. What we know is this soldier, the shooting occurred at the soldier's place of work. It did involve his co-workers. We're still not certain about the motivations, but again, he's been interviewed by Army investigators, and we believe we'll gain more information here shortly. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. We don't have any reason to believe it had anything to do with a training event. Other than that, I can't state the motivations for this soldier.
We've heard that the shooter
Yes, sir.
may have been from Jacksonville, Florida. Are you able to confirm that? We also heard that he had maybe been arrested for DUI recently.
Yeah, at this point, I can't confirm where he's from. We can follow up on that. I do believe he was arrested locally for a DUI that was unknown to his chain of command until the event occurred, and we started looking into the law enforcement databases.
Robin, now from the current, can you tell us whether or not that was a military weapon or whether this was a personal weapon that the person brought on things?
Yes, ma'am. I can confirm it was not a military weapon, and we believe it was a personal handgun. Yes, sir.
What does this mean for ongoing security measures in that situation was able to occur with a personal weapon?
Yeah, I'm very confident in the security of this installation. We've got a great partnership with local law enforcement. As you can see here at our gates, we have armed guards in protective equipment. This one's a bit difficult, and we're going to have to determine how he was able to get a handgun to his place of duty.
WCON News for Jax, has the suspect had any prior disciplinary or behavioral issues on May?
No, ma'am, not that we're aware of. But again, it's early in the investigation, but not that I'm currently aware of. I don't have the details on that, but I know that his soldiers in the area that witnessed the shooting immediately and without hesitation tackled the soldier, subdued him, that allowed law enforcement to then take him into custody.
And we've got time for one more question.
I know that you can't speak to the motivation, but if this turns out to be some situation where somebody had extremist beliefs or maybe classified as a terrorist attack, I mean, how does that change the base's response or the base's investigation moving forward?
Yeah, currently we have no reason to believe any of that is the case. However, we continuously assess the threat environment, both in the immediate area and across our Army and DoD installations, and we will address the threat level accordingly.
Do you have the rank of the shooter?
Yes, sir. He was a sergeant. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your questions, and again, thanks to the local responders and the local community for their help. Thanks, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, I'm going to give you the proper spelling. I'm going to give you the spelling of the assailant. The first name is Cornelius. It's spelled Q-U-O-R-N-E-L-I-U-S. Last name is Radford. R-A-D-F-O-R-D.
R.D. Radford. He's 28 years old.
And there was some mention he was.
All right, just some updates there from Fort Stewart, Georgia. There had been some discrepancies. We were just talking about it, actually, Jeb, about the alleged shooter who's a 28-year-old Army sergeant with ties to Florida, apparently, who is Cornelius Radford, Q-U-O-R-N-E-L-I-U-S. There have been reports of it spelled with a C, a common spelling, but a very interesting spelling. I'm sure they pulled that from Army records. And as you heard the general speak, very preliminary investigation going on right now, but they do have the suspect in custody. They are interviewing him, and the investigation is ongoing. They have discussed and talked with the 5 victims' families. Those 5 soldiers who were shot. It sounded like a couple of them did need surgery at nearby hospitals and other interventions as well. So I'm sure this will be a developing story that we will not only cover here on WCNC Plus, but throughout the day over on WCNC and through our WCNC mobile app. But again, don't forget our 6:30 Impact Weather stream and our 7 to 9 stream tonight. We'll update things as well. Speaking of weather, it has been another soggy day, albeit not as soggy as it was yesterday for a lot of people around the Charlotte area. Let's go to our forecast right now with Majestic Storm.
Well, good Wednesday afternoon to you. I'm WCNC meteorologist Majestic Storm, and boy, it has been an abnormal start to the month of August. Not only have we had multiple days in a row of rain showers, we've had flooding and flash flooding, and our temperatures have been well below where they should be for this time of the year. And today, here's the deal. The bulk of the rain that we saw this morning, especially for our morning commute, it's going to continue to slowly move out of our area, but we are still weather alert because we're watching still for the impacts of that rain that's currently falling for some of us in our viewing area. Thursday and Friday, drier conditions, temperatures nearing 80 degrees, so finally some warmer weather heading our direction, and that's going to be the trend even this weekend and especially next week. Now look at how much rain we have received over the last 48 hours. I mean, it has been very rainy, not just rainy, but we have seen dangerous flash flooding yesterday, especially in York County. Look at that, almost 6 inches of rain for Rock Hill. We saw that rapid rise in rivers, streams, creeks. And today, the rain continued to fall early this morning, mid-morning, early afternoon. But generally, it's going to start to taper off as we're heading into the second half of our afternoon and into the evening. However, can't help you much with the temperatures. It's still a cooler day overall. However, I know many of you love this kind of weather. The dreary weather with the cloudy skies and the rain that's coming down. It's a little cozy for some of us. So enjoy it while it lasts. As we're heading into tomorrow, throughout the rest of our work week and into the weekend, those rain chances, they'll start to drop. It won't be 0, but it's going to be way less than what we have received over the last few days. Doesn't seem like we'll get another good surge of rain until next week on Tuesday. Few things we got to talk about though, because we are still seeing some pop-up showers and possibly an isolated storm. I think through most of the day, it really starts to taper off. Thursday is going to be a much quieter day, much of the same on Friday with the return of some sunshine, I think by Friday and into the weekend. Now this is just weird. Yesterday we didn't even reach 70 degrees. Our forecasted high was right around those upper 60s, low 70s, and that's exactly what we saw. We hit 69 degrees yesterday, and today we're forecasting 74. So still below our average. We should be into the lower end of the 90s, but at least we're a little warmer than where we were yesterday. Let's take you up into the mountains out there towards Banner Elk, 66 degrees. That's where you're topping off. 67 out towards Blowing Rock. As we're looking across the foothills, still cloudy skies, few more passing showers, not going to last all day though. Morganton 76 degrees, and then again across the Charlotte metro area, mainly into the low to mid 70s today. 72 out towards Concord, 73 for Monroe today. Now we're looking at the next few days ahead. You're going to notice that we'll see that gradual warming trend on Friday, almost 80 degrees, and then on Saturday back into the mid 80s. It's going to feel fantastic if you're making your weekend plans. Hopefully you can make some outdoor weekend plans, because the last few days, that's kind of the last place you've been wanting to be. Over the next 10 days, you can see mid 80s over the weekend. And then finally, by the middle half of next week, those 90-degree temperatures, they're coming back just where we should be for this time of the year. So if you miss the sunshine and the warmer weather like I have, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Notice though, our overnight lows have felt pretty good, cooling nicely throughout the overnight hours. It's because we just haven't been warming up a whole lot into the mid 60s, and then they'll start to gradually warm back back into the 70s. Here's a look at the next 3 days ahead. So warming up a little bit for Thursday. Still not a whole lot of sunshine. I think we will receive that though by Friday. Into the weekend, look at us go. Saturday 84 for our high, 85 on Sunday. And again, I think by Wednesday and into the middle half of next week, those 90-degree temperatures will return. Have a great Wednesday.
All right, so nice to have some updates from our Impact Weather team. Of course, we'll have more for you tonight at 4, 5, 6, and then 6:30 here on WCNC Plus with our chief meteorologist, Brad Panovich. Last week, we had been discussing, and really we covered the situation in Cincinnati, where there had been a viral video from downtown Cincinnati where there was a brawl, and really there had been controversy from the White House to local leaders saying things on social media that certain folks believe that they shouldn't have said. So there's just been a lot of things discussed, and there were some updates today. Even Ohio Senator Bernie Moreno held a news conference, and then one of the victims of the brawl, her name is Holly, spoke as well in this to let folks know how she was and her perspective on the entire situation as a whole. Let's go to this now.
I feel strongly about that. However they prosecute and whatever they say, that's just how I feel in my heart.
Holly, with everything that's happened to you, what's some of the good that's come out of this?
Oh my goodness. I think that people are coming together, kind of like today, the meeting that happened today. I don't think they would have been able to get into a room and say, how can we move forward? How can we help each other? I think the whole country is so divided normally of Republican or Democrat or white and black or, you know, all these different things. But now they're just saying, how can we just find love and come together? How can we stop looking at it as religion, color, you know, all of these other things, and how do we just look at it as making our community safe again? So I think that that is bringing everyone together in that aspect, and that is what's giving me my strength to keep going and knowing that there will be a better future for my children. And, you know, you guys have the power right now to do something about it.
Now, Holly,
Everyone.
prior to today, did you hear from city officials at all?
I cannot comment on that.
Can you talk about your recovery, your physical recovery, and kind of what you've been through, the extent of your injuries?
Yeah, I'm still going to a lot of specialists. I'm kind of like Dory the fish right now, if you will. So I have my aunt as my caretaker because I literally just, you know, my brain comes and goes a little bit, my memory, in my body, they call it the aftershock. The doctors, the first couple of days it was really just here, and now it has just completely gone into my whole body. Like, I'm having a lot of trouble just walking, moving, getting out of bed. I'm in excruciating pain all the time. You know, if it wasn't so important to be here today to help talk, kind of be the voice for preventing this for the future, I would not have left my aunt's basement in a dark bed with a blanket over my head. It's been horrible.
What was your reaction when you heard the fifth person got arrested earlier this week and then just today, September the 6th?
You know, I'm really glad, especially the fact that the fifth, or the person who got arrested today was the female, because she had just as much part of it, and I think so many people were talking about the males, but I mean, I think as a whole it should be the males, the females, anyone who had a part of it. But I do feel a little bit safer knowing the man who did this to me was finally arrested. I know I haven't slept in a while, and that at least took me out of fight or flight to where I was like, okay, I can relax, and my name has been cleared as a Russian spy, so I feel better about that. So, so no, I hope that they keep going. I hope that they don't stop and they get as many as they can to keep the streets safe for everyone.
Senator, we've seen a few studies that show that mandatory minimum increases don't necessarily deter crime. Can you expand on why you think this legislation will be effective?
Yeah, because mandatory minimums do reduce crime. That's a talking point for the people who don't believe in law and order.
I'm looking at Pew Research.
And that was, you took the words out of my mouth. The only people that say stuff like that is Pew Research. So literally, you beat me to it. Look, the reality is, we have a guiding principle, two beautiful words: common sense. If you commit a crime and you're punished for it, you will commit less crimes, and the punishment has to fit the crime. I mean, look, here's the reality. Holly has a death sentence, a life sentence. This is a life sentence for her. And anybody who has a mom in their life, a wife in their life, a daughter in their life knows that there's no recovery from that. Every single day for the rest of her life, she's going to have to live through this. And yet the person who does it gets away with, oh, you know, you're a bad guy, and you give us $400, we'll put you in some sort of community service program. No, that person should suffer just as much as she's going to suffer for the rest of her life. If that's not attempted murder, what is? When you are a strong young man and you clock a woman in the head and her head hits a concrete or asphalt street, what do you think is going to happen to her? You think it was going to be a nice thing? Well, imagine if that happened to you. What would be your mandatory minimum sentence if that was you or your mom or your sister? I tell you, it wouldn't be a slap in a wrist in community service. And look, the deterrent has to fit. If you don't have punishment that's real, and this has become a problem, to a large extent it's become a game with these criminals, with the police officers, which is massively demoralizing for the police. They do their work, they risk their lives, they capture this person, they arrest them, they put handcuffs on them, they put them in their squad car. None of that, by the way, is safe for the officer. They're at risk every single second of every part of that operation. Then they get that person in jail. They have to do mounds of paperwork, document everything, and heaven forbid they didn't dot an I or cross a T. And then to see a judge let them off like that before they're even done doing paperwork. Do you know what that feels like as a police officer? Why would I do this job? So look, to the people who want to go into the law enforcement field, I can tell you one of the things that came out of the meeting today is that's not going to be tolerated any longer in Cincinnati, in Hamilton County, or anywhere in Ohio. We're going to make certain that when you are a police officer and you raise your hand, you volunteer to serve our communities. And I hope you do. I hope the people watching this, hoping there's a young man or a young woman out there watching this and sees no better calling than to be a police officer, to make certain that you protect people like Holly, that you sign up and become a police officer, make a difference in your community. There's no more moral obligation that you can have to serve your community than being a police officer. And we want to have people step up. We want to have too many recruits coming in to serve the community. We're going to have your back, and we're going to make certain that these judges are held accountable.
Senator, you were mentioning the collaboration now with the city, county, state, even the FBI. You mentioned the meeting getting needed. What is going to be done moving forward that wasn't done before?
Well, look, it's all of us in the same room talking. I'll give you a little for instance. Everybody has turf wars. You guys understand that. I'm sure there's turf wars in your profession too. You have a county prosecutor, and they have a team and a staff, right? They have pride of ownership of what they do. And then you have a U.S. Attorney's Office that has the same thing. But sometimes we can move a criminal from the state system to the federal system. That requires a federal U.S. attorney, and we have one in Dominic Geraci, that's willing to take these cases on. And to your question about mandatory minimums, you know what else is going to be a deterrent? Is when you go out and you mess around and you commit some of these crimes and you think, oh, it's going to be some local judge, some district judge that's going to let me off. Oh no, you're going to have a federal judge and a federal prosecutor and a U.S. attorney and an FBI that's going to prosecute you, and that will also be a deterrent. We're going to bring the U.S. Marshals in as well. I think there's a role for them to play. There's a big role for the DEA, ATF to play to get these guns, illegal guns, out of the system. So there's a lot of work that's going to be done. It all happens when you collaborate. You talk to anybody in law enforcement, and they'll tell you that the most effective deterrent, the most effective way to conduct law enforcement is everybody is on the same page and is in the same room. In fact, I give major credit to the special agent in charge of the FBI, who said, let's meet twice a week. Let's meet twice a week, every week going forward. We'll talk about cases. We'll say, should this be you? Should this be you? Should this be a district judge? It should be a federal judge. That kind of cooperation is really important.
So it sounds like a lot of the gun cases you're suggesting moving them to the federal level instead of the state level?
Absolutely, if that's what it takes, absolutely. Yes.
What are the metrics you're going to be using to identify if we're moving in the right direction when you come back on August 19th and moving forward?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So Director Kash Patel is not only an amazing director of the FBI, happens to be a really good friend. He's offered to provide the data source so we can all agree. So when we say crime is down, crime is sideways, crime is down, up, we have objective metrics. These are the actual statistics. Kind of like the staffing levels. We now know exactly what the actual metric is, 1,059 officers. That's what we have to hit. We're 115 short of that number, 56 in the recruitment class. We have to get the extra 56 officers across the finish line. So the FBI is going to provide that data, not just for Cincinnati. Cincinnati had this incident happen. This could have easily happened in Cleveland, probably more likely, honestly, to happen in Cleveland, and Columbus. Could have happened in Youngstown, Dayton, Toledo. So we're going to have metrics for the top 7 cities, and what we want to see is improvement. So a very simple scorecard. Green means you're doing better, red means you're not doing better. And then an action plan that's driven by that. So if we're going backwards, what are you doing about it? And it can't be shifting blame. Look, I think one of the things that we learn in the business world where I'm from is you have to do better, and you have to have a plan, and you have to acknowledge you have a problem. I think that's where the meeting didn't start out so great. Like, if we think everything's perfect, then we have one set of circumstances. I don't think Holly thinks it's perfect. It wasn't perfect for her. And we have to do better. So we have to get past that gate of we have to do better, and then we have to get past the next gate, which is it doesn't matter whose fault it is. It matters who's going to be involved in getting to a solution. And that's how we ended the meeting. I think that was very productive. I applaud the mayor for plowing through. I applaud the chief for plowing through, and everybody in that room who we had to put aside a lot of egos and a lot of rhetoric and just plow forward with one central premise. We love this city, we love this state, we love this country, and we can never allow something like that to happen again. Very simple.
Who initiated that meeting?
We asked everybody to come together, and it was private. If you noticed, we didn't want to have those discussions because, look, this is about constructive forward progress. That's what it's all about. And we're going to get to the other side. I firmly believe in the core ingredients of Cincinnati are here. By the way, I forgot to mention a world-class soccer team, too, by the way. So make sure that I don't miss Cincinnati United. But look, we have world-class amenities. This is a great city. And by the way, what happened here is much worse, much exponentially worse in cities like Chicago, New York, and where I have to go work every week in Washington, D.C. So we just don't want to go there. We don't want to get to the point where we even remotely resemble those cities. And I think there's police officers who maybe work in those communities that want to come to where they can have better housing, more affordable, better communities. So if somebody's watching this and lives in New York, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, Boston, come to Ohio, come to Cincinnati, be a police officer here. We'll give you better benefits, better quality of life, and we'll always have your back because we don't have complete raving lunatics as mayors. So look, there's an opportunity here for Cincinnati to be even better. And that's why Holly, look, I told Holly I wasn't going to get corny. It took a lot for her to have the courage to leave her home and stand in front of you. This is not new for her. Look, I've been doing this campaigning and being in office for 3 years now. For her, this is totally new. For her to stand in front of you and take questions took an enormous amount of courage, but she's doing it because she wants her state to be better. And I hope that every elected official, when we meet on August 19th, and every meeting after that we keep her in mind and say, look, that we're doing this because we don't ever want this repeated. And if she has the strength to come here in front of all of you and in front of millions of people that may be watching, we should have the courage to sit in a room, put our egos aside, our agendas aside, and say what is best for this community. And I think we will get there. I am very, very optimistic for the future. In fact, I would encourage everybody in this metro area who's watching, take a stand. You know how you can take a stand? Come visit a Cincinnati establishment today, tomorrow, this weekend. Do not let the bad guys win. We win when we stay home. When we say, you know what, I don't want to be like Holly, I'm too afraid to go out. No, then they win. The bad guys win. You show up here in downtown Cincinnati and have dinner at any of 20 different restaurants that I could recommend for you that are absolutely fantastic. That's how we show that we're not going to be bullied into submission. And I hope we have record turnout for every single solitary event that happens in Cincinnati for the rest of the year. That's how we rise up as a community. Benny Johnson, I give credit to him. He wanted to put a GoFundMe page. Actually, by the way, I'm going to embarrass Holly here. She said, please don't do that. I don't want people giving me anything for nothing. And Benny said, no, you call her back and talk her into it. And she reluctantly took it. Because of people all over America, we've raised over $500,000 to help Holly. That shows the humanity. That's what America is all about. That's what makes our country special. And we never should forget that. You'll take 2 more questions and we'll wrap up.
And when you're talking about elected officials, I know there was probably so much talked about today, but did the comments by Victoria Parks come out at all?
Look, I didn't go there this morning because it's so obvious, and you know, they were so outrageous, so off the pale, that she's got to make a decision to make at this point. What does her morality look like when she's accepting money to be employed by the city of Cincinnati and made such outrageous comments? Again, I'm not going to look at Holly when I say this. How she read those comments and didn't completely break down is beyond me. And Victoria Parks, at least the first thing you should do as a good Christian is pick up the phone and call her and apologize. Say, I am so sorry that I made those comments. Maybe there's not forgiveness that happens from the general community, and she has to decide that with God, but she should at least seek forgiveness from the person that she hurt very badly. And also, a couple other comments that were made by Pastor Lynch I think were outrageous. This has nothing to do with race. The idea that I'm somehow here advocating for this because she happens to be white. By the way, I'm Hispanic. She's Irish. This has nothing to do with whether you're Hispanic, white, Indian, black. I don't care your nationality. If you're a woman going out to eat in a restaurant, you get the crap beat out of you as your life. I don't care who you are. That's unacceptable. And for him to make it racial, like we were race baiting, and by the way, it's despicable that we have these KKK banners being floated around town. That's not who we are. And this is probably a dozen complete morons, total misfits that combined maybe have 100 IQ between the 15 people that are probably doing this, that are despicable human beings that probably aren't even from Ohio. To them, you're not welcome here. And that's what we got to show a force the other way. We got to show a force the other way. This is our moment. This is Cincinnati's moment to rise. And the reason I'm so optimistic is because I know we will rise to this moment. This will never define us. What will define us is what we do from today forward. Fix the problem, make certain that we have safety and prosperity in the community, and show that we're much better than what we saw 8 days ago. And we are. That's the good news. And Holly, thank you for having the strength to be here to address everybody. I want to thank all of you for covering this story, and I think you've done a very good job.